Chapter 168. The amber gold color made the old man's eyes light up. A piece of upper-grade spirit stone was enough for him to trade for a few days. He grabbed it to verify its authenticity and immediately nodded. "Will do as you say. I'll count it for you." He immediately counted the white talismans in the stall. There were more than 1,000 white talismans, but there were only a dozen of level 4 talismans. The rest were not worth much to Yu Qianqiu. In the end, it cost a total of 7 upper-grade spirit stones. Yu Qianqiu threw 8 to him and stuffed all the white talismans into his storage bag. Then, he ordered, "Keep the change. You've already taken the deposit. Remember to bring more tomorrow. The same price. I'll take as much as you have." The old man repeatedly said yes. Suddenly, he was startled as if he remembered something. He hesitantly took out a piece of upper-grade spirit stone and said, "To tell you the truth, I've already given you what I have. It will take a few days to gather more materials. I'll have to go out of the 100 Flowers Valley to find some materials. I won't be able to deliver it to you tomorrow. You should take back the deposit first." Yu Qianqiu frowned and asked, "How long will it take for you to come back?" The old man thought for a while and said, 2 to 3 days at least, 5 to 6 days at most. It depends on the time needed to gather materials. In that case, you should keep the deposit. I'll be staying in the 100 Flowers Valley for a long time. Prepare more goods. I'll come to get them when I have time. I'm sure you won't abscond with the deposit, right? Yu Qianqiu said in a deep voice. "Yo. Look at what you're saying. I'm Dong Guosu, and I've set up a stall in the 100 Flowers Valley for a few decades to make a living. My entire family has settled down in the 100 Flowers Valley, so I can't ruin the livelihood of my entire family just for a piece of high-grade spirit stone from you. Besides, I'm not blind. I can tell that you're a disciple of supporting Immortals Island from your attire. I can provoke anyone but supporting Immortals Island." The old man Dongwa smiled apologetically. "It's good that you understand. It's a deal then," Yu Qianqiu said indifferently and left. Considering that the supply of old man Dongwa's family might not be able to keep up with the demand, he wandered around the market and found several stalls that made talismans. After bargaining, he also bought a lot of talismans. After wandering around for a while, he looked at the time. It was almost time for the appointment he had with Bai Zitsong and the other 3 yesterday. When he walked to the Bai clan's shop, Bai Zitsong and the other 3 were already looking at him with smiles on their faces. The 5 of them joked around and discussed where they should go for a drink. Yu Qianqiu chuckled and said, "I seem to recall Yan Zhuixing saying that all my expenses in the 100 Flowers residence will be on him, right?" Tan Fei was stunned. "Brother, you can't really be thinking of going to 100 Flowers house again, right?" "Can't I? Why wouldn't I eat if it's free?" Yu Qianqiu asked back. The 4 of them immediately looked at each other. After all, they were from a big clan. They really couldn't do such a shameless thing. Bai Zitsong smiled and said, "He's being polite, but it's not good for us to take it seriously, right? Let's go somewhere else. It's really a problem of being spoiled by big clans. Their skin is quite thin. Forget it, I'll take the lead. You guys can just treat it as my treat. Stop daydreaming, let's go. Let's go," Yu Qianqiu said as he pushed the 4 of them. Unable to dissuade him, the 4 of them helplessly followed him to 100 Flowers house. However, once they reached the door, they took the initiative to keep a distance from him and pretended to be calm as they looked around. Yu Qianqiu felt a little strange when he stepped into the door. Why was there no one downstairs today? When shopkeeper Chen saw him, he quickly walked over and said respectfully, "Mr. Yu, are you here to look for my young master?" "Oh. That's not it. Today, I'll treat the 4 of you to a drink or 2. As he said that, he pointed at Bai Zitsong and the other 3. When the 4 of them heard what he said, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They felt a little embarrassed and turned their heads to the side as if they were attracted by some scenery. Shopkeeper Chen was stunned at first, then his face twitched slightly. He smiled apologetically and said, "If that's the case, the 5 of you should go to the private room upstairs. There's no need to go through so much trouble." Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, "The 5 of us will just find a table downstairs to eat something." No matter how thick-skinned he was, he couldn't always come to eat the best banquet of others. This. Shopkeeper Chen hesitated for a while and explained, "Mr. Yu, I'm really sorry today. The restaurant downstairs is not receiving any guests. The few of you, please go to the private room upstairs." Cleared? Did someone book the entire restaurant? Yu Qianqiu was shocked. No wonder there were no guests downstairs. At this moment, there was a commotion outside. Yu Qianqiu poked his head out to take a look and was shocked. Yan Zhuixing and Yan Zixia were leading a large group of people, and the person in the middle was none other than the 10,000 demons Qiu Weiyuan. Many people felt that he looked familiar. What's going on? While they were shocked, Shopkeeper Chen explained, the Diabolism has formed an alliance of Diabolism. They are also staying in the 100 Flowers Valley. The 100 Flowers Palace is going to welcome them at the 100 Flowers House, so we have to clear the restaurant. Mr. Yu, please give me some face and invite me to the private room upstairs. The righteous created a cultivation alliance, and the Diabolism created a alliance of Diabolism. Damn! They are opposing each other. There's going to be a good show. I was wondering what these old guys were busy with today. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed, "Shopkeeper Chen, I didn't know you were busy today. It's our fault. I'll come again another day." Not at all, not at all. Shopkeeper Chen was still trying to be polite. Yu Qianqiu turned around and left. He didn't want to stay and greet Qiu Weiyuan and the others. The righteous and the Diabolism had already started fighting. As a small disciple, it was better for him not to get involved. He called Bai Zitsong and the others to change places. The 4 of them didn't want to come, so they didn't have any objections. It's little brother Yu Qianqiu in front. After walking a few steps, Qiu Weiyuan, whose eyes were sharper, had already raised his voice and shouted. "Yu Qianqiu? Where? Where?" Qiu Weiyuan's shout immediately caused the disciples of the Myriad Demons Temple, the Blood Devil Temple, and the Corpse God sect to boil up. Many disciples of the 3 sects had heard of Yu Qianqiu's name in the demon ghost region. Unfortunately, most of them had never seen him. Now that they heard of Yu Qianqiu, they naturally wanted to see him. "Old thing, will you die if you don't shout?" Yu Qianqiu squeezed out a smile on his face, turned around, and cupped his hands towards Qiu Weiyuan, who was walking over quickly. "Senior Qiu, I haven't seen you for many years, but you are still as elegant as ever, truly worthy of congratulations." Bai Zitsong and the others didn't know what was going on. They stopped to watch. Wasn't this Yu Qianqiu a disciple of Fuxian Island? Why was he so familiar with the Diabolism? Moreover, it seemed like they had a close relationship. Haha. Qiu Weiyuan looked back at his fellow Diabolism members and laughed heartily. "I knew I wouldn't be wrong. It's indeed brother Yu Qianqiu." The people of the 3 major Diabolism sects also gathered around as if they had seen a rare animal. Many of them cupped their hands and said, "I've heard a lot about you." Yu Qianqiu also cupped his hands towards them. Although Yan Zixia tried her best to pretend that she didn't know Yu Qianqiu, she couldn't help but be surprised. Since when did he have a relationship with the Diabolism people? The Diabolism people didn't seem to have any ill intentions towards him. Especially Qiu Weiyuan, who treated him like an old friend. This was a little unbelievable in the cultivation world. Yan Zhuixing's eyes flickered between Yu Qianqiu and the Diabolism people. He was actually shocked. He thought to himself, what is the background of this Yu Qianqiu? Chapter 169. Being able to see little brother again is truly a joyous thing. Come, let us drink a cup with little brother. Qiu Weiyuan extended his hand and pulled Yu Qianqiu's arm towards the 100 Flowers house. Yu Qianqiu did not know whether to laugh or cry. They were in public, could you please be more mindful of your image? Diabolism and righteous sects are so close. How am I going to explain this? He struggled a little and shook his head with a bitter smile. Senior Chiu, please reconsider. Chiu Wuyuan turned around and said in a daze, could it be that little brother is looking down on this old man and not giving me face? Yu Qianzhou shook his head and said, Senior, please consider for me. I am a disciple of Fuxian Island. Chiu Wuyuan glanced around and instantly understood Yu Qianzhou's concerns. He immediately let go of Yu Qianzhou's arm and said with an embarrassed smile, I was a bit too excited to see little brother. I didn't put myself in your shoes. Since that's the case, little brother, please do as you please. Senior, you think highly of me. Yu Qianzhou said politely and cupped his hands. I still have something to do, so I can't stay for long. If there's a chance in the future, I will invite all of you to have a drink with me. Goodbye. After that, he pulled Bai Zitsong and the other three out of the crowd. The three major demonic sects cupped their hands at him. At this moment, Yan Zhuixing's mood was indescribable. A disciple from a righteous sect could make the three major demonic sects give him face. It was unbelievable. What had happened behind the scenes? Of course, he did not know that Yu Qianzhou had saved the lives of the disciples from the three major demonic sections. The righteous sects might think that Yu Qianzhou should have saved the disciples of the righteous sects, but to the demonic sects, it was a huge debt of gratitude. The demonic sects had always been particular about taking revenge, unlike the righteous sects who had many concerns. It was the demonic sect's way of doing things. The five entered a remote restaurant and sat down. Bai Zitsong applauded softly and smiled. Brother Yu is really admirable. Even the demonic sects have to look at you differently. If Brother Yu said you were just an ordinary disciple of Fuxian Island, I wouldn't believe it even if you beat me to death. Seeing that the four of them wanted to ask, Yu Qianzhou waved his hand. Stop, stop. I am indeed an ordinary disciple of the supporting Immortal Island. It's just that some things happened in the past. My sect also knows about it, but it's not convenient for me to tell you now. Don't ask. Even if you ask, I won't tell you. When the time is right, I will not hide it anymore. He said it so straightforwardly, so the four of them didn't ask any more questions. They called for food and wine to be served. They chatted and laughed for a while. After eating and drinking, Yu Qianzhou told the four that the elders of the sect allowed him to bring his friends to visit the Cultivation Alliance. He didn't know if the four of them would be interested. In fact, ordinary people wouldn't pay attention to the four of them because of their identities. They got along with Yu Qianzhou purely because of the golden signboard of Fuxian Island. After spending some time with him, the four of them greatly appreciated Yu Qianzhou's straightforward character and treated him as a friend. Now that they heard that they could visit the Cultivation Alliance, they readily agreed. It was not a place that ordinary people could enter casually. Yu Qianzhou threw out some spiritual stones to pay the bill. The five drunkards walked toward the Cultivation Alliance, chatting and laughing. When they came to the gate, they suddenly saw a few people coming out. It was Lu Wanwan who led them out. The two of them looked at each other. Lu Wanwan snorted coldly and ignored him. Yu Qianzhou glanced at him casually and ignored him. Suddenly, his eyes swept over a beautiful figure among them, and his body suddenly trembled. The few of them brushed past them. Yu Qianzhou was stunned and slowly turned around. If he didn't see it wrong, the beautiful woman was none other than Kuangsung's Chu Ping. Why was she here? She clearly saw him, but why didn't she recognize him? Could it be that his appearance had changed so much? Yu Qianzhou touched his face subconsciously. Bai Zitsong and the other three also found something wrong with him. Tan Fei suddenly said in a low voice, Brother Yu, if I remember correctly, the beautiful woman among them seemed to be the person you wanted to see. She should be Lu Zhengguang's Taoist partner. Yu Qianzhou's entire body shook when he heard this, and then he turned around and suddenly grabbed Tan Fei's collar as he shouted explosively. What did you say? Didn't you say that his Taoist partner's surname is Su? The few of them were shocked and quickly separated the two. Tan Fei shouted angrily, Brother Yu, what do you mean by this? Do you really think that the 4 major families are afraid of Fuxian Island? Yu Qianzhou clenched his fists so hard that cracking sounds could be heard. He suppressed the anger in his chest and slowly said in a deep voice, "Brother Tan, please don't take offense. I was the one who didn't control myself. Please follow me, I have something to say." After that, he left. The other 4 people exchanged glances and nodded, then followed him. The 2 disciples of the Cultivation Alliance also knew Yu Qianzhou. They didn't know what happened to him. The few of them arrived at a secluded mountain field, and Yu Qianzhou slowly turned around and said in a low voice, "Brother Tan, that woman from before is a woman I haven't seen for many years. Her name is Chu Ping, Ah." They were all stunned. Tan Fei's mouth was wide open. If his woman was said to be someone else's Taoist partner, he would definitely kill that person. He couldn't help but say, how is this possible? She should be Ang Kuangsung's disciple. How did she become your woman? Bai Zizong also knew that the problem was getting out of hand. He frowned and said, "Tan Fei, what's wrong with you? Didn't you say that Lu Zhengguang's Taoist partner's surname is Su? How did she become the Chu Ping, that brother you mentioned? Did you get the wrong person? Su. Chu. Damn it. It's not that I heard it wrong. It's just that it's been too long and I can't remember it correctly." Tan Fei was annoyed. Yu Qianzhou said in a low voice, "Tan Fei, are you sure that the person you saw in Ang Kuangsung was her and not someone else? Brother Yu, I won't hide it from you. This woman's appearance is really good. You all saw it just now. I saw her in Ang Kuangsung and I remembered her deeply. There's no mistaking her. She is indeed the Taoist partner that I saw in Ang Kuangsung with Lu Zhengguang. Unless Lu Zhengguang changed again, there's no mistaking her. Damn it. What nonsense did I say? Brother Yu, I'm really sorry." Tan Fei didn't even know what expression he had when he said this. Everyone was silent. They all knew that Lu Zhengguang was a eunuch. Finding a woman to be his Taoist partner was probably to cover up his flaws. Why would he change women so casually unless he had a screw loose? Junior Marshal Brother Yu, Junior Marshal Brother Yu. Xiong Hui suddenly appeared not far away and shouted. He jogged over and cupped his fists, smiling, "Yo! Brother Bai, Brother Jing, Brother Wu, Brother Tan, the 4 of you are here too." The 4 of them had something on their minds. They forced a smile and nodded as a greeting. Xiong Hui did not mind. He walked over to Yu Qianzhou's side and said with a smile, "Junior brother, you really made me look for you for a long time. I didn't expect you to come here. Are you here to see the scenery? What a good mood." He looked around as he spoke. Yu Qianzhou said indifferently, "Senior Marshal brother, is there anything you need from me?" Xiong Hui nodded and smiled, "Junior Marshal brother, let me tell you something funny. Today, people from Ang Kuangsung came to Ang Kuangsung to bring Lu Zhengguang back to Hundred Flowers Palace. Didn't you say you wanted to see Lu Zhengguang's beautiful Taoist partner? Haha. You might not know, but his Taoist partner is here too. I saw her just now. She's really beautiful. Sigh. It's such a pity that a eunuch like Lu Zhengguang found such a beautiful Taoist partner. Junior Marshal brother, they are going back in the afternoon. Why don't you go and see them now? You don't have to go to Ang Kuangsung in the future." Yu Qianzhou didn't get angry after listening to him. Instead, he laughed sinisterly, "Hee hee. Very good, very good." Bai Zizong and the other 3 knew that he was laughing out of anger. They rolled their eyes at Xiong Hui. This guy really touched my sore spot. In Utopia, Guan Yu was cultivating cross-legged on the bed. Suddenly, he heard Yu Qianzhou's gloomy voice, "Yun Chang. Order the troops to enter level 1 combat readiness." Chapter 170. Guan Yu abruptly opened his eyes and nodded heavily. Then, he got off the bed and opened the door. He walked to the stone platform in the field and raised his head to look at the black flag embroidered with the word, "Hero," fluttering in the wind on the flagpole. He felt a surge of excitement. He thought, this is the first time boss gave an order. It seems like it's time to test the combat ability of this team. He took out a golden horn from his storage bag and blew it hard. Senior brother, you should go back first. We have something private to talk about, Yu Qianqiu said expressionlessly. Xiong Hui was stunned. He looked at them and realized that everyone's expression was not normal. Something must have happened. He nodded and said, it's okay. You guys talk, I'll go back first. He then left quickly. After a moment of silence, Bai Zizong frowned and said, Brother Yu, what's going on? Why is An Kuansung's female disciple your woman? Do you really want to know? Yu Qianqiu's voice was emotionless. Bai Zizong thought for a while and said, Brother Yu, if you really treat us as brothers, why don't you tell us? Perhaps the four of us can be of some help. Yu Qianqiu closed his eyes and thought about how Chu Ping had become someone else's wife. His heart ached. All these years of hard work was mixed with his feelings for her. He was hurt, in pain, and even knelt. He never forgot the promise he made in the past. Why did he treat her like a stranger when they met again? Memories of all these years flashed in his mind. He didn't expect that the thing he insisted on would be trampled on by someone else. His heart hurt. Yu Qianqiu nodded slightly. When he opened his eyes again, he was facing the mountains. He let out a long breath and said, Before I joined Fuxian Island, I was An Kuansung's disciple. Ah. The four of them were shocked and looked at each other. This was a taboo in the cultivation world. Jingzuo looked at him and said, Brother Yu was expelled by An Kuansung? According to the four of them, he must have been expelled by An Kuansung before he joined Fuxian Island. Otherwise, he would have committed a huge taboo. No. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and looked into the distance. When I first entered the cultivation world, I joined An Kuansung. I met a master who was very good to me. That was when I met Chu Ping. Later, in order to prepare for my foundation establishment, my master was killed when he went out on a trip. You guys haven't stayed in An Kuansung, so you don't know how difficult it is for a disciple to survive without the protection of a master. Not long after, because I got close to Chu Ping, I offended Lu Jingguang and was sent to the spirit stone mine to do hard labor. Life there is so difficult that you disciples of big families can't imagine. At that time, the people of Enchanted Illusion Palace attacked the spirit stone mine. In order to escape, An Kuansung's elder Lu Wanwan used his disciples as a shield. I was one of them. He grabbed me by the neck and threw me out. Yu Qianqiu paused and turned back to look at them. Fortunately, I was lucky and didn't die. At that time, I thought that since my life was so worthless in An Kuansung, I might as well leave. So I took this opportunity to escape. Later on, I met Chu Ping, again in the 100 Flowers house in the 100 Flowers Valley. The two of us made a promise to each other that we wouldn't part until we met again in a few years. It was also at this time that I personally castrated Lu Jingguang. Ah. The four were stunned. Tan Fei was stunned. You castrated Lu Jingguang? Yu Qianqiu nodded. That's right. Since I see you four as my brothers, there's no need to hide it from you. I can swear to God that I haven't mentioned this to anyone except the four of you. His story was half true and half false, and he even modified it a little. In the end, the four of them became somewhat excited. For Yu Qianqiu to be able to reveal such a secretive matter and even swear an oath, it was clearly true. Bai Zizong exhaled and said, So that's how it is. What happened after that? After that, maybe my luck changed. It was also the same day that I was introduced to supporting Xian Island. I was lucky enough to be accepted as the only disciple of supporting Xian Island's Alchemy Pavilion's principal elder. Thus, I focused on cultivation. When I stepped into the 100 Flowers Valley again, I met you four by chance. You all know what happened after that. Principal elder of supporting Xian Island's Alchemy Pavilion? Could it be the pill addict Senior Guan in the cultivation world? Wu Liqing asked. Yu Qianqiu cupped his hands in the direction of supporting Xian Island. That's my master. Jingswa nodded. That's not bad. I was just wondering how Brother Yu was able to reach the core formation stage in less than 10 years. So it was because of Senior Guan's medicinal pills. The four clans naturally knew the Guan clan's status in supporting Xian Island. No wonder Yu Qianshou dared to hit someone in public. He was also so rich. It turned out that he was a direct descendant of the Guan clan. The four of them secretly thought that it wasn't a waste to make this friend. Maybe he could help them smoothly inherit the position of the clan leader. Bai Zitsong sighed. No wonder Brother Yu was so excited when he saw Chu Ping. It seems like she let you down. But why would she become Dao companions with a eunuch? I'm afraid there's something she had to do. I think Brother Yu shouldn't be too anxious. Let's investigate this matter first. There's something we won't hide from Brother Yu. The four of us are the first successors of the four clans. Why don't we use the four clans' power to help you investigate this matter? The other three nodded in agreement. This is returning a favor. I've already guessed that the four of you are important in the four clans. Otherwise, how can a normal descendant live such a leisurely life in the 100 Flowers Valley? I also can't play with you all day long. Yu Qianshou shook his head. No need. I want to ask this personally. But there's something I need to trouble the four of you with. The four of them looked at each other. Bai Zitsong nodded. Brother Yu, you don't have to be so courteous. From today onwards, we're brothers. If there's anything we can help with, just let us know. Yu Qianshou didn't stand on ceremony. He took out a small porcelain bottle from his middle finger and dripped a drop of blood into it. Then, he pretended to cast a spell. After closing the bottle, he passed it to Bai Zitsong. Isn't Ang Kwangsung bringing Lu Zhengguang back? I believe it's not just one or two people. I need to go back and deploy some forces to prevent any accidents. I'll have to trouble the four of you to help me keep an eye on him. Once we're out of the 100 Flowers Valley, Brother Bai can open this bottle. I'll know where you guys are. Bai Zitsong took the bottle and nodded happily. We'll go watch the city gate now. Don't worry. After saying that, the four of them left together. Yu Qianshou returned to the Cultivation Alliance with a gloomy face. He went to his room and disappeared after closing the door. In Utopia's military camp, 3 companies of people in black clothes and masks were ready to go. On the stone platform, Yu Qianshou suddenly appeared. Guan Yu shouted, "Salute!" Swoosh! The hundreds of people below the platform clenched their right fists and placed them on their left chests. They lowered their heads slightly. Their movements were very orderly. Yu Qianshou's gaze swept across the small silver medallion on everyone's chests. There was a serial number on it, and when it was forged, he had added a little of his own blood into it, allowing him to easily grasp everyone's location. After a while, Yu Qianshou nodded. Guan Yu shouted again, "End of ceremony." With a swoosh, everyone returned to their original state. Not a single one of them spoke. They just stood there silently, waiting for their orders. Yu Qianshou also didn't say a word. He quietly stood on the stone platform with his eyes closed. Guan Yu looked at him in surprise. His lips moved. He wanted to ask what they were doing, but his gaze swept past his subordinates who didn't say a word. He held himself back. Thus, everyone stood there without saying a word. The scene was extremely strange. Chapter 171. At the exit of the 100 Flowers Valley, Bai Zitsong and the other 3 found a table by the window in a tea house and sat down. The 4 of them chatted and drank tea while waiting. After more than 4 hours, Tan Fei suddenly put down the teacup in his hand and gestured to the window with his lips. The 4 of them casually turned their heads to look. A group of people wearing Ang Kwangsung clothes passed by the window and walked towards the city gate. At the front were 6 old men walking side by side, followed by a man and a woman. The man's face was gloomy, and there were scars on his face from being beaten. The woman was extraordinarily beautiful, and there was no expression on her face. Her figure was even more curvaceous. The man and woman were Lu Zhengguang and Chu Ping. The 10 people behind them were old and young. Jingzhou stuck out his tongue and laughed softly. This An Kuansung seems to be afraid of Yu Qianqiu. He actually needs so many people to escort him back. Bai Zizong shook his head. It's not that Yu Qianqiu scared them. An Kuansung knows that Lu Zhengguang fought with the disciples of Fu Xian Island and is afraid that they will take revenge. That's why he sent so many people to escort him back. Otherwise, a core formation cultivator like Yu Qianqiu wouldn't make them do this. Jingzhou laughed. The dignified Fu Xian Island shouldn't be so narrow-minded, right? They are really gauging the heart of a gentleman with their own mean measure. TSK. Other than that, Lu Zhengguang and Chu Ping, I can't see through the cultivation of the others. Obviously, they are at least in the middle stage of core formation. The 6 elders in front are probably in the nascent soul stage. Tan Fei said. Wu Liqing frowned. What is Yu Qianqiu trying to do? With such a lineup, I'm afraid it won't be so easy to negotiate. Jingzhou smiled and said, I didn't expect the 4 of us to do something like stalking someone. Yu Qianqiu has quite a reputation. That goes without saying. He didn't even give face to the number 1 demonic sect, 10,000 demons Qiu Yuan. Don't you think that's a big deal? Bai Zizong said slowly. Don't say any more. They are about to leave the city. Let's follow them. Tan Fei suddenly said. They glanced at each other and immediately got up to pay the bill and left the tea house. When they left the 100 Flowers Valley, they saw that An Kuansung and the others had already flown far away on a flying instrument. Bai Zizong opened the lid of the porcelain bottle in his hand and nodded at the 3 of them. The 4 of them rode on their swords and chased after them at a moderate distance. In Utopia, Yu Qianqiu immediately felt the location of his blood essence moving quickly. He raised his eyebrows and opened his eyes abruptly. He said, Yunchang, get ready. I'll go out and take a look. When he reappeared, Yu Qianqiu appeared behind Bai Zizong and the others on his sword. The 4 of them noticed the movement behind them and turned around. They were slightly shocked. When did he catch up? Yu Qianqiu accelerated to Bai Zizong's side and flew side by side with the 4 of them. He turned his head and asked, What's going on? Bai Zizong replied, There's a total of 18 people, and they're all on the flying magic tool in front. Aside from Lu Zhengguang and Chu Pinger, there are 6 old men who are probably at the nascent soul stage, and the other 10 should be at the middle stage of the core formation stage or above. What are you going to do? Yu Qianqiu didn't reply to him. He stared at the flying instrument in the distance and narrowed his eyes. He contacted Guan Yu with his mind and said, Flying Pursuit, Company 1, get ready. In Utopia, Guan Yu waved his hand and shouted, Flying Pursuit, Company 1, get ready. With that order, the first team extended their right hand and placed it on the shoulder of the person in front and the left hand on the shoulder of the person on the left. The entire Company 1 was linked together. Yu Qianqiu shrouded them with his divine sense. In an instant, the entire Company 1 appeared behind the 5 of them silently. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed at the flying instrument in the distance. He clenched his fist and made an encirclement gesture. The Company 1 commander at the back nodded and made the same gesture to the 2 platoon leaders beside him. He pointed at the flying instrument in the distance. Then, he extended his hands and made an encirclement gesture with his palms. The 2 platoon leaders nodded and waved their hands. They led the 2 teams to separate from each other and quickly chased after the flying instrument. The Company 1 commander led the remaining platoon and flew forward at high speed. Bai Zizong and the other 3 saw Yu Qianqiu waving his hand and didn't know what he was going to do. Suddenly, they heard the sound of people flying at high speed from both sides. Before they could react, they saw a team of people dressed in black, with only their eyes exposed, overtaking the 5 of them. Just as they were stunned, another team of people dressed in the same clothes flew past them. Looking at their flying speed, there was no doubt that their cultivation was higher than the 5 of them. The 4 of them were shocked. Bai Zizong was stunned. This is the power you deployed? Yu Qianqiu nodded. The people on the flying instrument were the people An Kuang-sung had sent to pick up Lu Jingguang. The sect master of An Kuang-sung, Lu Changqing, loved his grandson dearly. When he received the news that his grandson was beaten up by the people from Fuxian Island, he was angry but helpless. After all, Fuxian Island was too strong. An Kuang-sung couldn't afford to offend them. For safety reasons, he specially ordered Elder Wu Boru and 5 other nascent soul stage elders to lead 10 core formation stage disciples to pick up Lu Jingguang. As Lu Jingguang's Dao partner, Chu Ping was his wife. She had no reason not to come and check on her husband being beaten up. The people on the flying instruments suddenly heard the sound of people flying at high speed from both sides. They looked to their left and right and saw 2 teams of people dressed as assassins sandwiching the flying instrument in the middle. Wu Boru, who was leading the team, had a bad feeling. Although the flying instrument could carry a lot of people and was suitable for long-distance flight, it wasn't suitable for speed. If they were attacked in the air, it would be terrible. An Kuang-sung had been fighting against the Devil Dao for many years, so he had trained his combat skills. Everyone pulled out their swords and faced their surroundings calmly. They didn't panic at all in the face of people who outnumbered them by several times. Wu Boru looked around and his eyes fell on an open space in the forest. He waved his hand and pointed. He said in a deep voice, "Go down." An elder immediately controlled the flying Dharma artifact to rush down. Once it landed, everyone on it immediately jumped down and the flying Dharma artifact was quickly put away. Everyone formed a circle, surrounding the sect master's grandson and Chu Ping in the middle. The 2 groups of black-clothed people in the air immediately followed and landed, jointly cutting off the retreat of the blue light sect people. The remaining gap was then closed by another group of black-clothed people that followed. At this point, An Kuang-sung's people were surrounded. Wu Boru looked around and was secretly shocked. Among the black-clothed men, there were many whose cultivation levels even he couldn't see through. Furthermore, there were quite a few who were at the late core formation stage. If a fight broke out, his side would have no chance of survival. After calming down, Wu Boru immediately saw that the company commander was the leader of this group. He cupped his hands and said, "Who are you? Don't know why you've trapped my disciple, An Kuang-sung, halfway. Could it be that I, An Kuang-sung, have offended you?" The company commander, who only revealed his 2 eyes, looked at him coldly. He didn't say a word, nor did he order to attack. The group of men in black surrounded them, ready to attack at any time, but not yet. Seeing that the leader in black didn't speak, Wu Boru looked around and said with a slightly angry tone, "Friend, what do you want? If there's nothing else, please let us go." Haha. A laugh was heard. Yu Qianqiu, Bai Zitsong, and the other 2 who arrived late landed on their swords. The men in black immediately made an opening. After the 5 of them entered, they immediately surrounded them again. Yu Qianqiu walked around and smiled. "Wu Boru, Elder Wu, long time no see. How have you been?" Bai Zitsong and the other 3 were looking at these men in black, trying to figure out who they were. Wu Boru's expression froze. His chest heaved up and down as he sneered, "Yu Qianqiu, it's really you. You really didn't die? I'm standing right in front of you. Didn't you see it? Why? You must be disappointed that you didn't force me to my death back then, right?" Yu Qianqiu laughed. Lu Jingguang, who was surrounded by An Kuang-sung's disciples, couldn't take it anymore. He roared, "Yu Qianqiu, you've gone too far. I'm going to kill you." As he was about to rush out, he was held back by a few disciples. No matter how hard he struggled or shouted, they wouldn't let him go. Yu Qianqiu raised his hand lightly and pointed at him, "You don't know your place. What are you shouting for, you damn eunuch? Do you know the meaning of going too far? When I was in An Kuang-sung, why didn't you touch your conscience and ask yourself if you were going too far? Let me tell you, I was the one who stripped you and castrated you in 100 Flowers' house. How about that? Being a eunuch for so many years must feel great, right?" Everyone in An Kuang-sung was stunned. Even Chu Ping, who didn't look at Yu Qianqiu directly, raised her head and looked at him. It was indeed possible. He was in Hundred Flowers' house when Lu Jingguang got into trouble. When Lu Jingguang heard that, he was so angry that his body trembled. He said, It's you? It's you. I'll kill you. Now that he finally knew the culprit who made him look like a man or a woman, it was easy to imagine how he felt. He roared and rushed out to take revenge without any regard for his life. Hold him back. Wu Baoru frowned and shouted. A few disciples held him back tightly. Now wasn't the time to be impulsive. Wu Baoru looked around and said in a deep voice, I heard that you joined supporting Immortal Island. In that case, these people are all disciples of supporting Immortal Island. That's right. In the cultivation world, other than supporting Immortal Island, which other sect could transfer such a group of experts at any time? I really didn't expect this. The world's #1 sect, supporting Immortal Island, actually did such a thing to me, on Kwangsung. It's really despicable. Supporting Immortal Island is nothing. A voice came from the top of a mountain. Everyone was shocked. Who was it? They didn't even put supporting Immortal Island in their eyes. Wu Baoru and the others were stunned for a moment before they were pleasantly surprised. This person actually said such words. It was obvious that he wasn't on good terms with supporting Immortal Island. They didn't expect there to be a third party here. It might be a chance for An Kwangsung's disciples to survive. Which senior is here? I'm An Kwangsung, Wu Baoru. I welcome senior to uphold justice. Wu Baoru cupped his hands towards the direction where the voice came from. Bai Zitsong and the other three felt something was wrong. They looked at Yu Qianqiu at the same time. They saw the latter looking at An Kwangsung and the others with a sneer. They couldn't help but look at the forest behind them. The sound of a horse's hooves came from the forest on the hillside. A silhouette riding on a horse was faintly seen walking down from the trees. A burly middle-aged man wearing a green robe and a green hat could be seen on his head. He had 3 strands of long beard on his face. His face was flushed and a pair of phoenix eyes looked imposing. He was riding his horse slowly towards the crowd. The mount he was sitting on was even more eye-catching. It had bright red fur, and its eyes shone with a demonic light. Especially its body, it was more than twice the size of a tall horse. Its chest and limbs were full of bulging muscles, making it look like a divine and extraordinary steed. Everyone had never seen such a big horse. Coupled with the person sitting on the horse, it was really shocking. What an imposing manner. This person was none other than Guan Yunchang. He rode his horse down and the man in black took the initiative to make way for him to enter. From then on, those who didn't know his background finally knew that the person who came was also on Yu Qianqiu's side. Guan Yu sat upright on the horse and glanced at An Kwangsung and the others coldly. He said in a deep voice, Where are the people from Fuxin Island? Who was the one who asked me to uphold justice? Wu Baoru was completely speechless. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Guan Yu who was sitting high up beside him. He was very unhappy. He thought to himself, what did my sister teach this stupid horse to cultivate? Doesn't she know that this stupid horse can't get along with me? Damn it. He's all grown but he stole my limelight. Wu Baoru looked at Guan Yu from head to toe. He suddenly realized that although this person looked extraordinary, his cultivation base was the lowest among them. He couldn't help but sneer. I was wondering who came. So it's a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. Guan Yu's red phoenix eyes widened slightly. He said proudly, You have a sharp tongue. You'll be crying later. As he spoke, he looked at Yu Qianqiu and asked, Boss, what are you going to do? Yu Qianqiu stared at Chu Ping, who was in An Kwangsung's group and said indifferently, You still haven't said anything. Don't you know why I'm here? Don't you want to give me an explanation? An Kwangsung and the others followed his gaze and realized that it was actually Chu Ping. They couldn't help but look at each other. What did this have to do with her? Hearing that, Chu Ping's body trembled. Her face turned pale in an instant. She raised her head miserably and shook her head with a bitter smile. You know everything now. Isn't that enough? What else do you want me to explain? Yu Qianqiu clenched his fists. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Then, he opened his eyes and exhaled. The promise from back then. I want to know why. I want an explanation. Bai Zizong and the others exchanged glances. Yu Qianqiu was a good brother. Everything he said was true. Ong Guangsong and the others' eyes flickered. They could vaguely guess what was going on. Bitch. You bitch. How dare you have an affair behind my back? Lu Zhengguang roared again. Although his body was restrained by his disciples, he could still move his legs. He immediately kicked Chu Ping's abdomen. Chu Ping grunted in pain. She was kicked to the ground. A few strands of her beautiful hair were messed up. She bit her lips and covered her abdomen with one hand. Then, she slowly climbed up. Yu Qianqiu felt a heart-wrenching pain in his chest. He let out a voice that sounded like it came out from the depths of hell. He said coldly, Wu Baoru, you better control that little bastard. If he dares to speak rudely or touch me again, I'll send all of you to meet the ancestors of Ong Guangsong. Chapter 172. Wu Baoru's expression changed unpredictably when he was reprimanded in front of everyone. It alternated between white and red. He was obviously angry. However, the situation was stronger than the person. With a single order from the other party, he could really annihilate all of them. After hesitating for a while, he turned around and walked towards the restless Lu Zhengguang. It seemed that he really wanted to stop him. Martial Ancestor Wu, ask them to let go of me. Ask them to let go of me. I want to kill this adulterous couple. I want to kill this adulterous couple. Lu Zhengguang roared incessantly. Chu Ping stood not far away. Her eyes were filled with tears, but her silver teeth were still stubbornly biting down on her red lips. Traces of blood had already seeped out. Yu Qianqiu's expression also became increasingly gloomy. He narrowed his eyes at Lu Zhengguang, and his chilling intent was self-evident. Zhengguang, shut up. Wu Baoru shouted. His figure suddenly flashed, and he quickly rushed to Chu Ping's side. His left hand grabbed her neck, and the long sword in his right hand was also placed on the neck of his left hand. It looked like he was going to slice Chu Ping's head off her neck. Chu Ping immediately felt that it was difficult to breathe. Her pretty face was slightly raised from being pinched. Finally, 2 sad tears rolled down from the corners of her eyes and dripped down her cheeks. Perhaps it was because she knew that she was about to die. Although her head was raised, she couldn't help but look at Yu Qianqiu with a pair of mournful eyes that were filled with deep regret. Anyone who saw that miserable pretty face would feel heartache. However, Yu Qianqiu was unbelievably calm, as if Chu Ping's life and death had nothing to do with him. He slowly raised his hand, rubbed his nose, and stared at Wu Baoru. He asked emotionlessly, Wu Baoru, what do you mean by this? Are you trying to use her to threaten me? Wu Baoru used both his hands to control Chu Ping's life. He turned around and placed her in front of him. He looked at Yu Qianqiu and laughed evilly, little brat, this old man has eaten more salt than you have eaten rice. Don't play this trick in front of this old man. Since you're here for this girl, don't act like you don't care. Hurry up and tell them to get out of the way. Letting us go is the right way. Maybe if I'm happy, I'll let this girl go. When Lu Zhengguang heard this, he was unhappy and immediately shouted, Grandmaster Wu, you can't let this bitch go. Kill this slut for me. Shut up. Wu Baoru turned around and shouted fiercely. There was a look of exasperation on his face. Ever since this child's body became ill, it became harder and harder for him to control his temper. Even at a time like this, he was still acting on his emotions. After he finished scolding, he turned around and smiled evilly at Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu, hurry up and tell them to get out of the way. My patience is limited. Yu Qianqiu had never been threatened like this before. He looked at Chu Ping, who was having difficulty breathing, and smiled indifferently. old fart, it's not your turn to bargain with me. Seeing that you and my master are from the same sect, I'll give you two choices based on our old friendship. 1. You kill her immediately, then I'll kill all of you. 2. You let her go and I'll let all of you go. Wu Baoru looked at Chu Ping. Naturally, he wouldn't dare to kill her. She was everyone's life-saving item now. After pondering for a moment, he shouted, I choose the second option, but your words have no proof. How can we believe you? Yu Qianzhou saw that Chu Ping's face was already turning green. The muscles on his face twitched. He raised a palm and said, I swear, if you let Chu Ping go safely, I'll let all of you go. Otherwise, I'll be punished by the heavens. Wu Baoru, stop talking nonsense with me. I'll count to 3. If you're late, you'll all die. He turned around and said to Guan Yu, I'll count to 3. If they still don't let her go, I won't spare a single one and kill them all. 1. 2. He immediately started counting, not giving the other party any time to prepare. I agree. Wu Baoru hurriedly shouted. He was really afraid that the other party would count to 3. He had no other choice. Yu Qianzhou didn't give them any time to think. Moreover, the other party had already made an oath. Cultivators' oaths would come true if they broke it. What was there to worry about? Wu Baoru let go of his hand and pushed Chu Ping out of the crowd of Kuangsang. The latter fell to the ground. At this moment, Bai Zizong and Tan Fei nodded. The two of them dashed over and carried her back to Yu Qianzhou's side. Yu Qianzhou looked at the two of them with relief. Yu Qianzhou, it's time to fulfill your oath. Wu Baoru shouted. Of course. Yu Qianzhou waved his hand at the black-clothed man diagonally across him and said, Make way and let them leave. The black-clothed man obeyed the order and quickly made way. Kuangsang and the rest were overjoyed. They held their swords and retreated cautiously towards the gap. Guan Yu sat on the red rabbit, watching Kuangsang and the rest retreat. He was so angry that his face turned even redder. How could he not be angry when the hero army that he had trained so hard ended up like this in their first battle? Guan Yu said unwillingly, Boss, are we just going to let them go like this? Yu Qianzhou glanced at him and said leisurely, I've already made an oath. What do you want me to do? Do you want me to break my oath and be punished by the heavens? Humph. After saying that, he turned around and suddenly said, I've made an oath. As for whether you guys have made an oath or not, I don't know. Anyway, this is not something I can control. Hearing this, the faces of Kuangsang's disciples who had not completely retreated changed. Wu Baoru was so angry that he scolded, Yu Qianzhou, you scum, you will die a horrible death. Let's go. Kuangsang and the rest immediately flew away on their swords with all their might. Guan Yu's eyes lit up. He chuckled and waved his hand, saying, Don't leave a single one alive. Kill them all. The company commander received the order and pointed with his finger, shouting, Battle formation, kill them all. The military order was as firm as a mountain. Dozens of nascent soul late-stage men in black took the lead and quickly chased after them. The rest of the men in black followed in an orderly manner. After the group of black shadows whizzed away, there were only a few people left. Guan Yu had always felt that Chu Ping looked familiar. At this moment, he remembered that it was the woman he met in Hundred Flowers' house. He immediately smiled and said, Red Rabbit, let's follow and see. The Red Rabbit was quite intelligent and could understand Guan Yu's words. It didn't need to control it much either. With a long hiss, its majestic body suddenly stood up, and its two front hooves scratched the air. Then, it suddenly put them down and took advantage of the momentum to rush in the direction of the black-clothed man. Its 4 black and shiny hooves flashed, setting off a gust of wind around everyone. By the time they reacted, the Red Rabbit's huge body had already carried Guan Yu dozens of meters away. It was really fast. Looking again, a horse carrying a person was running in the mountains as if it was running on flat ground. Regardless of the steep mountain or the dangerous road, it only cared about running in a straight line. It ran faster and faster. Gradually, it turned into a black dot and disappeared. It seemed that nothing could stop it. Bai Zizong and the other three looked at each other in shock. They thought to themselves, what kind of horse is this? It actually had such a fast running speed. Even a cultivator who had just reached the foundation establishment stage couldn't fly as fast as it ran on the ground. Yu Qianqiu glanced at it and showed a look of disdain. In fact, he was also very envious of Guan Yu for having such a BMW. He had long wanted to take it for himself. He believed that it would be very cool to ride this guy for a few laps. However, this little beast was very vengeful. It always remembered that he had kicked it in the past. Under normal circumstances, it wouldn't even let him get close to it, let alone ride it. He could only watch Guan Yu ride such a handsome guy around in Utopia. He could only be envious. Sigh. What a sin. Looking at Chu Ping, at the side, the crystal clear tears on her pretty face kept sliding down her cheeks. However, she bit her lips hard to not cry out. Her lips were already bright red, obviously biting very hard. The big footprint left by Lu Jingguang on the abdomen of her pure white clothes was still very obvious. Yu Qianqiu opened his mouth a few times, wanting to say something, but he didn't. He really didn't know what to say at the moment. In the end, he couldn't take it anymore. He exhaled and said, "The four of you help me look after it. I'll go take a look." When the four of them nodded, the long sword was unsheathed and bounced up, drawing an arc in the air, carrying him quickly. Although he could disappear for a short while, the man on the sword and the woman on the ground were both inexplicably sad and in pain. They could only fly quickly in the air, letting the strong wind continue to blow and tear their faces. Chapter 173. It had to be said that Anquansung's battle strength was very strong. After years of fighting against the demonic sects, especially when the Blood Demon Palace launched a large-scale attack, those who survived were all people who climbed out of a pile of corpses. Not to mention cultivation, just based on battle experience, it was not something an ordinary person could compare with. However, Guan Yu's subordinates were also not ordinary. They were the outstanding disciples of the three major sects, and they were able to survive the trials in the Demon Ghost region. Every one of them was not simple. However, when comparing the two sides, Anquansung was definitely at a disadvantage. First of all, Guan Yu's side had more people, and their cultivation was generally higher than the other side. In addition, these years of intensive training, their ability to fight together was very strong. Guan Yu rode the red rabbit on top of a mountain and looked down. Yu Qianqiu landed next to him on his sword. The two of them looked at each other and looked down at the same time. Anquansung didn't escape for long before he was stopped by the black-clothed people. The black-clothed people who came from behind immediately surrounded them. Anquansung and the others probably knew that they had no chance of survival. Wu Baoru let everyone huddle together, and 6 nascent soul stage elders led the way. They desperately rushed out, hoping that one of them could escape. But was it possible? The company commander coldly snorted, waved his hand and shouted, "Strangle them." More than 100 black-clothed people each took out an arrow talisman and threw it out. Rays of yellow light shot out, and Anquansung and the others were instantly forced into a panic. Following that, more than 100 flying swords flew over, and screams could be heard. When the black-clothed people retrieved their flying swords, the ground was covered in blood, and not a single complete corpse could be found. The battle ended in just a few moves. Guan Yu looked down and shook his head. "Boss, my squad can take care of these people. Is there a need to call out a company? It's always good to be careful. You must know that our army's follow-up forces have not caught up yet, and we still haven't replenished our manpower. If we lose one person, our formation will be incomplete, and that will be a loss. It's safer to fight with numbers." Yu Qianqiu said in a low voice, "Prepare to go back." Guan Yu nodded and galloped down on his horse. He circled around the area a few times and confirmed that Anquansung's people were all dead. After that, the entire group became one again. Yu Qianqiu flew down and covered it with his divine senses. He instantly returned to utopia. Glancing at the severed limbs on the ground, Lu Jingguang and Wu Baoru could be considered to have completely disappeared. However, they had died a little too quickly, which was a little different from his original plan. The sword shot out and flew away from this place. Returning to Bai Zitsong and the rest, Yu Qianqiu stared at Chu Ping, and said in a low voice, "They're all dead, including that eunuch husband of yours. Shouldn't you give me an explanation now? Brother you guys talk. We'll go back first." Bai Zitsong glanced at the two of them and said. It seemed like it was a little inconvenient for the four of them to stay here while they were talking about such a topic. Yu Qianqiu nodded and continued to stare at Chu Ping, Bai Zitsong, and the other two as they left on their swords. "Why aren't you talking? Do you still remember the promise you made to me back then? Do you know that I'm here to pick you up from Ankwangsung? I've never forgotten my promise to you." Yu Qianqiu's tone was calm, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. Chu Ping, smiled sadly and said, "Didn't you see everything? What else do you want me to say? Anyway, I'm sorry." As she said that, she took out an exquisite storage pouch from her clothes and rubbed it in her hand. Yu Qianqiu squinted his eyes. He recognized that it was the storage pouch that he gave her back then. Chu Ping held it out with her slender hands and said, "I didn't use any of the spiritual stones inside. I'm returning it to you." Yu Qianqiu's expression was dead, and there was no change in his expression. He said calmly, "I have a lot of spiritual stones. It's more than enough to buy you back from Ankwangsung. I'm not a gentleman, and I'm very selfish. If you really want to return something to me, then return the feelings that I gave to you. Can you return it to me?" Chu Ping squeezed the storage pouch in her hand, and a stream of tears began to flow down her face. She looked at Yu Qianqiu and shook her head as she cried, "What do you want from me? I've already said it. I want you to give me an explanation. Is this making things difficult for you?" Yu Qianqiu said softly. "Yu Qianqiu, please let me go. Do you think there's a need for an explanation?" Chu Ping shook her head. "Is there a need? Fine, I'll tell you a story." Yu Qianqiu looked at her and said slowly, "My home is in Huaxia Swallow City. I'm sure you've been there before. Once, when I was playing in the wilderness, I saw a woman washing her hair next to a stream. I only took a glance and was deeply in love with her. I couldn't help but stare blankly. But when the woman saw me, she glared at me and flew away on her sword. From that day on, I missed that woman all the time. I finally knew that the legendary celestial beings were real. So, I searched everywhere for the path of cultivation, not for anything else, but to see her again. Hard work pays off. Later, I joined Ankwangsung. Coincidentally, the woman of my dreams was also Ankwangsung's disciple. The way the two of them met was really funny. I accidentally saw the female disciple bathing. I think you should know who I'm talking about now, right? Swallow City. Swallow City. Chu Ping murmured, as if she was thinking about something. After a long time, she suddenly raised her head and said, "That young man was you?" Yu Qianqiu nodded and said, "Yes, you remember now. From the first day I joined the cultivation world until now, it can be said that everything I did was for you. Can't I get an explanation from you after I've sacrificed so much? Chu Ping, are you going to treat me so cruelly? You don't even give me a reason to give up. Aren't you too heartless?" Chu Ping, was a little speechless. She really didn't expect Yu Qianqiu to be so devoted to her. "What about me? Tell me why you were with Lu Jingguang. Ever since I saw you in 100 Flowers Valley today and found out about your situation, I have always believed that you had no other choice. I have always believed that." Yu Qianqiu looked very affectionate, and he gave off the feeling of Granny Wolf patiently guiding him. After some torment, Chu Ping's tightly clenched teeth were finally pried open by him. It turned out that when Lu Jingguang had an accident in the 100 Flowers Valley, the head of Ankwangsung, Lu Changqing, was furious and almost killed Chu Ping. Chu Ping-er's master, Li Rolon, argued strongly and risked defending the head to save Chu Ping-er. Originally, Chu Ping had thought that the matter was over just like that. However, after Lu Zhengguang recovered from his injuries, he continued to pester Chu Ping-er. Since Yu Qianqiu was already in her heart, it was only natural that she would ignore him. In fact, if Yu Qianqiu hadn't revealed Lu Zhengguang's matter, until now, most people in Angquansung didn't know what kind of injury Lu Zhengguang had suffered. Even Chu Ping herself didn't know that he was actually a eunuch. Later, Chu Ping-er's master, Li Rolon, made a big or small mistake. In fact, who could not make a little mistake? However, offending the head was offending the head. Lu Chongqing used this as a pretext to make a fuss. He was determined to kill Li Rolon. In order to save her master, Chu Ping had no choice but to beg Lu Zhengguang. The latter gladly agreed, but only on one condition, which was that Chu Ping had to become his cultivation partner. On one hand, there was the promise of her sweetheart, and on the other hand, there was the kindness of her master, who was like a mother to her. Chu Ping-er was in a dilemma. In the end, she agreed for the sake of her master. In the end, her master was saved, and she became Lu Zhengguang's dual cultivation partner. That was how the story went. Yu Qianqiu didn't expect that he was the reason why this matter ended up. However, after thinking about it, he felt relieved. Even if he didn't castrate Lu Zhengguang, that bastard would still have a way to deal with Chu Ping-er. However, what he couldn't figure out was how a castrated person could have dual cultivation with Chu Ping-er. Yu Qianqiu asked with a strange expression, Lu Zhengguang was castrated by me. You too. Dual cultivation. That, Chu Ping-er was not a fool. She naturally understood what he meant. She shook her head and smiled bitterly. I never let him touch my body, so he often hit me. At first, I thought. Who knew that you? She paused and gritted her teeth. You're really a pervert. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up, and he asked, You're saying that up until now, you've never let him touch your body. Then you. Although he didn't finish his words, Chu Ping-er already understood what he wanted to say. She shyly nodded, but then her expression darkened again, and she said, But what can I do? Everyone in the cultivation world knows that I'm his dual cultivation partner. Waha. Yu Qianqiu suddenly raised his head and laughed wildly. Chapter 174. Yu Qianqiu was very pleased with himself. Not just a little pleased, but extremely pleased with himself. Fortunately, he didn't like that bastard Lu Zhengguang back then, so he took the initiative to castrate him. Otherwise, he would have suffered a huge loss. He really had great foresight. Just think about it, which man would be able to hold himself back from having such a beautiful woman by his side? Only that silly girl, Chu Ping-er, would be so confident and think that she could protect herself. As a man with bad intentions, and a man who was in an absolutely dominant position, it was a piece of cake for him to lay his hands on any woman he wanted. Yet, you refused? You think you're smart? You're running to the heavens. It's only a matter of time before I get you into bed, and there are thousands of ways to deal with you. Putting himself in her shoes, he didn't believe that if you put a good cabbage in a pigsty, there would be a pig that wouldn't go for it. Of course, Yu Qianqiu had already admitted countless times in his previous life and this life that he wasn't a good person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used his own yardstick to measure other people's heart and killed Lu Zhengguang so early. But now, he was deeply rejoicing that his actions back then were simply too wise. Chu Ping looked at him with complicated feelings, and tears rolled down her cheeks. Seeing him laughing so crazily, she thought that he was laughing out of extreme anger, laughing at her for not being able to stand her ground. In this era, a woman's reputation in this aspect, whether it was in the secular world or the cultivation world, could not be tarnished. Men could have multiple wives and concubines, but women couldn't. Once they married someone, they would belong to that person for the rest of their lives. In fact, ever since Chu Ping-er agreed to be Lu Zhengguang's Dao companion, she no longer had any expectations for the future. She guarded her body with all her might, and silently stood by Yu Qianqiu in her heart. All of this was just a dream of a woman who had fallen in love with someone. Although she knew that her dream would never come true, this dream was really beautiful. It was the motivation for her to live on. The more Chu Ping'er thought about it, the sadder she became. She cried out loud. Today, her dream was finally shattered by Yu Qianqiu's laughter. She didn't expect that her dream would be so fragile in front of Yu Qianqiu. Her heart, which had long been broken into pieces, was once again shattered. Where should he go from now on? Seeing her cry so sadly, Yu Qianqiu was stunned and reached out to pull her. Chu Ping'er quickly stepped back, shook her head and cried, "Don't touch me. You know everything now. Are you satisfied now? Can you let me go now?" Let you go? If you don't go with me, where do you want to go?" Yu Qianqiu said in surprise. At first, he was worried that Chu Ping'er had been violated by Lu Zhengguang. After all, eunuchs were physically immature. Their personalities were more distorted. To put it bluntly, they were perverts. If that was the case, even if he accepted Chu Ping'er, he was afraid that his heart would be as uncomfortable as swallowing a few flies. Now, the grudge in his heart was gone. What he cared about was that Chu Ping'er's body was still pure. What he cared about was that no other man had touched Chu Ping'er's body before him. What he cared about was that Chu Ping'er's virginity still belonged to him. As for what would happen in the future if Chu Ping'er was cursed, saying that she was a whore or a slut, sorry, if you have the ability, come at me. I will kill you. In order to protect the woman I love, I will do anything. Go with you? Chu Ping'er thought that she had heard it wrong. For a moment, she forgot to cry. She didn't believe that Yu Qianqiu would bear the curse of seducing other people's wife for her. But he also didn't know what Yu Qianqiu cared about. Of course, the premise of all this was naturally that Yu Qianqiu had feelings for this woman. As long as a man wasn't sick, he would do it. Yu Qianqiu strode over and hugged Chu Ping'er tightly in his arms, unwilling to let go. He whispered in her ear, "It's all my fault. I should have made up my mind to take you away from the beginning. All the hardships you've suffered were all caused by me. I really, really regret it. Don't cry anymore. If you cry again, I'll feel even worse than you. Come with me. I won't let you suffer even the slightest bit. Trust me." Chu Ping'er buried her head in his arms and cried even harder. The muffled sound made people feel as if their hearts were being torn apart. After crying for a while, Chu Ping'er suddenly pushed him away. She shook her head and said, "No, I can't go with you. This will ruin your reputation. It's unfair to you. I can't abandon my master." Yu Qianqiu's face twitched. Master, it's master again. If I don't kill you, don't you know how to turn back? Damn it. Which B**tch did this to my woman? I will kill you sooner or later. After slightly suppressing the anger in his heart, Yu Qianqiu walked closer and said softly, "Reputation is really worthless to me. Ping'er, go with me. Don't worry, I will definitely go to Anquangsung and find your master to accompany you. Don't lie to me. You have killed so many disciples of Anquangsung. How can you go back to Anquangsung? Even if you go back, the people of Anquangsung will definitely not let you go." Chu Ping'er cried as she retreated. "I lied to you?" Yu Qianqiu was angered by her. He shouted sternly, "What kind of bullsh*t is Anquangsung? I swear to the heavens that if I don't flatten Anquangsung, I am not a human. Let's see how you can go back in the future." Chu Ping'er was stunned by his words. She forgot to cry. Can a cultivator's oath be casually made? What are you looking at? Other than coming with me today, you can't go anywhere else. Yu Qianqiu's face was filled with anger. He walked over and hugged her. The two of them immediately disappeared without a trace. When they reached Utopia, Chu Ping'er was still in a blind impulse. She did not notice that the scene around her had changed. She struggled desperately in Yu Qianqiu's arms. In a fit of anger, the latter carried her and teleported to a lake. He threw Chu Ping'er into the lake and shouted, "I will wake you up." Chu Ping'er immediately flopped around in the water. Although she was not in a deep position, she was still drowned by the sudden fall. When she regained her footing, she quickly walked towards the shore. Yu Qianqiu stood on a large stone platform by the shore with a gloomy expression. He was indeed angered by her. Suddenly, his expression froze. After Chu Ping'er's white dress was wet, the moment she walked out of the water, it immediately wrapped around her beautiful figure. Yu Qianqiu only felt a surge of heat rising from his abdomen. An irrepressible urge appeared in his mind. He felt that there was an evil fire that needed to be vented. He immediately leaped over, opened his arms, and hugged Chu Ping'er in his embrace. Chapter 175. The water grass by the lake was plump, but there was a disharmonious scene. The woman was pressed on the grass. Her soaked clothes were torn to shreds. There were only a few pieces of cloth hanging on her body, revealing her white and tender skin. Her plump body was exposed to the air. She was being crazily assaulted by a pair of big hands. She struggled, but she was powerless to resist. The man was dizzy with desire, and he forced himself in regardless of anything. Powerless crying, painful moaning, and heavy breathing gradually mixed together, destroying the tranquility of the lake. In the grass not far away, a few colorful pheasants poked their heads out and looked around. Everything was over. The two naked bodies hugged each other and stopped moving. The lake returned to its tranquility. Chu Ping obediently curled up in the arms of Yu Qianqiu. The latter glanced at the former and finally let out a comfortable breath after venting the evil fire. He pulled out a grass and put it in his mouth. Looking at the blue sky, there was a trace of a proud smile on his face. Women were often like this. If a man did not make the deepest breakthrough in her body, she would always leave some leeway and would never really treat you as her man. The so-called platonic love in his previous life was pure F*king nonsense. Some self-righteous guys took the feeling as love and described it to be very beautiful. In the end, some people were fooled into expecting and longing for this kind of love. In the end, they still couldn't resist the temptation of the body, and something that shouldn't have happened. Their bellies were still big. Only talking about love, but not doing it. What a pervert. Was that still called love? In the words of Yu Qianqiu, this kind of adulterous couple should be dug, separated, and buried alive, so that they could be platonic forever. Qianqiu. Yes. Chu Ping moved her body and slightly raised her head. She looked at him with eyes that were still full of lust and said, "You said you would bring my master. Don't worry. I will definitely bring your master." Although this was what Yu Qianqiu said, his eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. It could be said that he hated hearing her mention her master the most. He thought to himself, "Ping, whether your master is dead or alive, I will bring him to you." After saying that, Yu Qianqiu pushed her away, picked up his clothes, and put them on. When he turned around, he found Chu Ping'er curled up her limbs. She could no longer find any clothes to cover her body. Her plump and fair body was exposed to the air, and it was indeed very attractive. Yu Qianqiu picked up the two storage bags not far away. One was the one he gave her, and the other was also hers. He believed that the clothes she wanted to change into should be inside. After giving it to her, Chu Ping'er quickly took out a set of clothes and put them on. Then, she gently leaned on Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu did not stay in Utopia for too long. He returned to his room in the Cultivation Alliance. As soon as he left the room, he met his senior brother from supporting Immortal Island, who told him that Elder Quan was looking for him. After meeting Elder Quan, Quan Deming asked about what had happened between him and the people from the demonic Dao in 100 Flowers House. Yu Qianqiu told him about what had happened in the demon region. Quan Deming naturally understood and did not ask much. Then, he met Qingjing, who had come to look for him. The two of them had done many transactions in private and were old friends. Qingjing acted as the host and found a tavern. The two of them did not talk about anything serious before leaving. The shopkeeper recognized him at a glance. Last time, when Yu Qianqiu came, he saw that he was very familiar with Bai Zizong and the others. He knew that he was Bai Zizong's friend, and so he led him to the courtyard behind the shop. Yu Qianqiu saw that he was very familiar with Bai Zizong and the others. In the end, the four of them were gathered there waiting for him. The four of them were shocked by the strength that Yu Qianqiu had casually displayed. They thought that it was a secret force from supporting Immortal Island. In the end, the guy on the horse said, "What is supporting Immortal Island?" and changed their minds. There was actually a force that did not take supporting Immortal Island seriously. In that case, the force that was displayed this time was definitely not all. The four of them were even more shocked. To put it bluntly, the existence of such a powerful force with unknown background could completely threaten the safety of the four families. As the successors of the four families, it was impossible for the four of them not to be concerned about this. They all wanted to understand a thing or two from Yu Qianqiu. To Yu Qianqiu, it was naturally intentional to reveal a bit of his strength in front of the four of them. The five of them sat around a table and were served fragrant tea. Bai Zizong smiled and asked, "Is everything settled?" "Damn it. Fortunately, I castrated that bastard in advance. Otherwise, I would have suffered a great loss." Yu Qianqiu snorted. The few of them understood what he meant. He was telling them that Chu Ping was still pure. Bai Zizong frowned and said, "Brother Yu, have you considered the consequences of this? If others knew about this, I'm afraid that Brother Yu would be condemned by everyone and supporting Immortal Island's reputation would be tarnished. And Kuang-sung would definitely not let you off." To them, no matter what happened in the past, stealing someone else's wife was still a little hard to accept. Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "I'll chop off whoever dares to point at me. No matter how important supporting Immortal Island's reputation is, it can't stop me from finding a woman. As for Kuang-sung, it's already good enough that I didn't look for him. If they dare to look for trouble with me, then they must be tired of living. Moreover, if the four of you don't say anything about this, who else would know?" The four of them were stunned. Yu Qianqiu pointed at them and it felt like he was warning them not to speak about what happened today. Otherwise, if the few of them knew about it, how could they talk about it? "Brother Yu, who are those men in black? Why didn't we four families know that there's such a force in the cultivation world?" Bai Zizong asked casually. Yu Qianqiu smiled and said, "Do you mean the entire cultivation world or the cultivation world of the Huaxia Empire? If it's the entire cultivation world, I believe there are many things that you four families don't know about. For example, how much do you know about the Phantom region?" Tan Fei was stunned and said, "The cultivation world that we're talking about is naturally the cultivation world of the Huaxia Empire. Could it be? Brother Yu, are you saying that those men in black don't belong to the cultivation world of the Huaxia Empire?" "I didn't say that. You said it yourself." Yu Qianqiu joked and took a sip of the fragrant tea in his hand. He shook his head and said, "Forget it. You don't have to ask about this. There won't be any harm to your families. It's not that I don't want to tell you, but it's for your own good. Knowing too much about some things isn't good for the four families." Seeing that he was being so mysterious, the four of them didn't ask any more and changed the topic. Bai Zizong smiled and said, "The four of us have been out for a while. We're going back today. I wonder if Brother Yu is interested in visiting the four families?" Yu Qianqiu put down the teacup in his hand and scratched his head and said, "I want to go, but I don't know if I can leave. I have to ask for permission." "Oh right, what do the four families do for fun?" "Fun?" Bai Zizong pouted at Wu Liqing and said, "The Wu clan's auction business is famous in the entire cultivation world. Recently, the Wu clan will be holding their biggest auction in 5 years. At that time, there will definitely be a lot of rare items appearing. I wonder if Brother Yu is interested in taking a look. Cultivation World's auction? I haven't seen that before. I really want to go." Yu Qianqiu was excited. He then shook his head and said, "Sigh. I don't know if our elder Guan will let me go. If that's the case, why don't the four of us accompany you to the Cultivation Alliance to ask for permission? I believe your Fuxian Island will give us some face. What do you think, brother Yu? Bai Zizong smiled. That's great. Let's go now. Yu Qianqiu stood up and said happily. The four of them laughed and stood up. For the four of them, for the sake of their clans, rather than worrying about the black-robed man's threat, it was better to be friends with him. Yu Qianqiu was a very good link, and this was also the reason why Bai Zizong had warmly invited them. Chapter 176. As the five of them walked through the market, talking and laughing, someone suddenly shouted, "Mr. Yu." They stopped. Yu Qianqiu looked back and saw Donghua Su, who had sold him the white talisman, running over happily. He couldn't help but wonder, didn't you say it would take at least 2 to 3 days? Why? It's only been a day and you're back. Old man Donghua sized up the other 4 cultivators and discovered that none of them were cultivators that he could see through. He then cupped his fists toward Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, "Mr. Yu, it's like this. I've prepared some food and wine at home, so I'd like to trouble you and your companions to come to my place for a while." Yu Qianqiu felt more and more strange. He said, "Donghua Su, this is only the second time we've met. Why are you inviting us to eat and drink?" Donghua Su looked around and seemed to be a little worried. He just nodded and bowed and said, "Please do me the honor." "It won't take much time." They looked at each other and finally nodded slightly. They all wanted to see what this old man was up to. Yu Qianqiu looked at him for a while, pinched his chin and said slowly, "Old man Donghua, don't play tricks on us. Otherwise, you won't be able to bear the consequences. Lead the way." Donghua Su said eagerly, I don't dare. Just like that, the 5 of them were easily lured away. It was mainly due to their curiosity. After leaving the market to the south, there were many houses not far down the slope. They were all built by people who had been making a living here for a long time. Over time, it became a residential area. The 100 Flowers Valley was doing business with people all over the world. Naturally, it needed some people. As long as there was no problem with their origin, they were allowed to develop. Of course, the rules of the 100 Flowers Valley were still obeyed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to stay here for long. Donghua Su led them to a secluded courtyard and said with an apologetic smile, "This is this old man's residence. It's a little shabby, please excuse me." The few of them looked around. Although the courtyard was small, it exuded elegance and was not as shabby as he said. It was a good place to live. However, there was something strange about this matter. Yu Qianqiu frowned and said, "Old man Donghua, don't keep me in suspense. Just say what you want." Yes. Donghua Su shouted into the house, "Old woman, is everything ready?" "Done." A middle-aged woman dressed in a secular household's attire walked out and bowed to the crowd. She looked much younger than old man Donghua, but it was unexpected that she was the old woman he had mentioned. The few of them checked again. Her cultivation level was at the final stage of the foundation establishment realm, which was slightly higher than Donghua Su's. This was not hard to explain. Usually, those who had better talent and improved their cultivation level in a timely manner would naturally be better at delaying aging. The few of them scratched their heads and were invited into the main hall by the couple. A table full of fragrant aroma wafted through the air. A sumptuous feast of wine and dishes were already waiting for them. Donghua Su filled their cups and invited them to eat. His wife, on the other hand, stood at the side with a faint smile on her face. Her cultivation level was clearly much higher than her husband's, but she was willing to serve as a foil. She was a good wife who lived at home. The moment Yu Qianqiu smelled the wine, he knew that it was the 100 Flowers Valley's good wine, the 100 Flowers Brew. He glanced at the woman standing at the side and said with some mercy, "Mr. Donghua, this pot of 100 Flowers Brew costs a lot. It'll probably be difficult to buy a pot even if you sell talismans for half a year. How can we drink this wine in peace? If you have something to say, just say it." Don't beat around the bush, I'm confused. A trace of embarrassment appeared on Dongwa Su's old face, and he nodded to his wife. The middle-aged woman smiled apologetically at everyone and quickly brought a child about 7 or 8 years old from the side room. The child's big black eyes curiously looked at the few people in front of him. The woman next to him gently patted his back, and he immediately bowed to the few of them. The few of them were even more confused. They looked at each other, but even with their intelligence, none of them could figure out what was going on. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and said, I say, Mr. Dongwa, what do you mean by this? You treat us to wine and let us watch this child. Could it be that this child has some background? Dongwa Su smiled apologetically and said, to tell you the truth, this child has no background. He is my grandson. When we were young, we had wandered in the cultivation world and knew that it was full of dangers. We had long been tired of this kind of life and just wanted to live a peaceful life. Later, after we had a daughter, we were even more unwilling to take the risk, so we settled down in this 100 Flowers Valley. With this feeling, we naturally didn't want our daughter to walk on the path of us again. 10 years ago, she found an ordinary man in the secular world and married him. Who knew that when I went to visit her last year, she and her husband died in a war. The grandson they left behind also wandered outside and begged for half a year. After I found him, I brought him back. Wait. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and said, Mr. Dongwa, what do you mean by telling me this? You said it very clearly, but the more I listened, the more confused I became. What do you mean? Dongwa Su looked at his wife and said to Yu Qianqiu, our daughter's death was a big blow to us. We have learned from this painful experience and can't let our grandson walk on the same path as our daughter. We can't bear the pain of seeing our son die before us. My grandson has some spiritual roots, so I sincerely hope that Mr. Yu can recommend my grandson to supporting Immortal Island for cultivation. So that was the case. Bai Zitsong and the rest smiled, but Yu Qianqiu's face twitched a little. Why are you looking for me if you want to send your grandson to supporting Immortal Island for cultivation? Isn't there a shop of supporting Immortal Island in this 100 Flowers Valley? Why don't you just send your grandson there? Mr. Yu, don't you know that supporting Immortal Island always finds its own disciples and never accepts disciples who send themselves to the door? Dongwa Su was surprised. Yu Qianqiu was startled. Supporting Immortal Island seemed to have such a nonsensical sect rule. Oftentimes, some disciples who were expelled from the sect couldn't even find their original home. However, it seemed like he had indeed gone to look for them. However, that was because he had the immortal supporting token. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly and said, there are many cultivation sects in the world. Why do you insist on sending your grandson to supporting Immortal Island? For example, my 4 friends are from the 4 major clans in the cultivation world. It's not a bad idea to send your grandson to the 4 major clans to cultivate. The 4 of them rolled their eyes. They had never seen such a person. Don't push it to us even if you don't want to. They were all young people. Who would be willing to accept a disciple for a sect? It was a strenuous and unrewarding task. Bai Zitsong smiled and said, Brother Yu, don't you understand Mr. Dongwa's meaning? Mr. Dongwa wants his grandson to have a higher starting point. Besides the world's #1 sect, supporting Immortal Island, who else can have such a starting point but me? Mr. Dongwa, is this what you mean? Dongwa Su nodded and said, this Mr. is right. This old man has the same intention. Please help me, Mr. Yu. Yu Qianqiu was stunned and said with a smile, Mr. Dongwa, you are really calculative. I don't think I told you my surname is Yu, right? Mr. Yu's name has been spreading in the 100 Flowers Valley for the past few days. There's no need for you to tell me personally. Dongwa Su smiled embarrassedly. In fact, he had only heard about Yu Qianqiu's deeds yesterday. He really didn't know him, including when he was selling the white talismans. Later on, not long after Yu Qianqiu left the stall, there was a show with the demonic cultivators. The old man happened to close the stall and went to watch the show. The result made his heart palpitate. So this kid is Yu Qianqiu. He eats both the righteous and the demonic cultivators. He's amazing. Therefore, he set his sights on him. Early in the morning, he was waiting at the market. Seeing that he was invited by the shopkeeper of the Bai clan's shop, he clicked his tongue again. He knew that he would have to come out again. Therefore, he spent a lot of money to buy a bunch of things for his wife to prepare, and he went back to wait. Hard work pays off. Yu Qianqiu was finally tricked by him. Tan Fei chuckled and said, "Brother, you doesn't need to say his name in the 100 Flowers Valley." The other three couldn't help but chuckle. Yu Qianqiu smiled helplessly. He didn't know whether he should help or not. He waved at the kid and said, "Come here. What's your name?" The kid looked up at his grandmother. Seeing her nod, he walked over and said shyly, "My name is Hong Qi." "Oh. Hong Qi, why do you have such a strange name?" What did you say?" "You're Hong Qi." Yu Qianqiu suddenly thought of a famous person, the beggar sect's leader, Hong Qi. But this little guy still wanted to eat. Damn. He'll definitely be an amazing person when he grows up. Chapter 177. Donghua Su smiled. His father's surname is Hong. He was born on the 7th day of the 7th month, so he is named Hong Qi. I hope he will be easy to take care of. Yu Qianqiu nodded and touched Hong Qi's bones. As expected, he had spiritual roots for cultivation. He muttered in his heart, "Damn it. Guan Yu is already following me, so why should I give Hong Qi to supporting Celestial Island? They should all follow me. When I gather East Heretic, West Poison, South Emperor, and North Beggar, let's see who is stronger than me." With this thought, Yu Qianqiu touched his nose and smiled at Donghua Su. "How about this? Your grandson should be my disciple since I haven't tasted being a master yet." Haha. Donghua Su and his wife looked at each other. "You are so young." The two of them hesitated. The four of them felt weird too, as they didn't see anything special about this kid. Why did this guy want to take a disciple? Did he have nothing better to do? Bai Zizong snorted at the couple. "Brother Yu is willing to take your grandson as his disciple, that is his fortune." The couple regretted it as they felt like they had invited a wolf into their house. However, they couldn't afford to offend any one of them. Donghua Su smiled. "Since he is Mr. Yu's disciple, he is naturally a disciple of supporting Celestial Island." "It's the same." "Who said that?" "My disciple is my disciple and supporting Celestial Island's disciple is supporting Celestial Island's disciple." "Don't mix it up," Yu Qianqiu said in disdain. The couple exclaimed at the same time as they couldn't understand the difference. Donghua Su had a weird expression. "Is Mr. Yu not a disciple of supporting Celestial Island?" "I am a disciple of supporting Celestial Island. What does that have to do with my disciple?" Yu Qianqiu said and then casually said, "What is supporting Celestial Island?" No one was deaf. Although his voice was soft, they all heard it. The couple was a little confused. Bai Zizong and the other three exchanged glances. Could it be that this kid would join the mysterious force behind Yu Qianqiu that didn't even put Fuxian Island in his eyes? The four of them immediately looked at Hong Qi in a new light. "Hong Qi, from today onwards, I'm your master. Kowtow and acknowledge me as your master." Yu Qianqiu sat up straight. It was his first time accepting a disciple, so he was very formal. Hong Qi looked at his grandfather and grandmother, who were in a daze. Seeing that they didn't object, he obediently knelt down and kowtowed 3 times, calling him master. By the time the couple realized what was going on, it was already too late. Their grandson had already gone through the ceremony. Yu Qianqiu pinched his chin and looked at Hong Qi from left to right. He felt that everything about him was good. The more he looked, the more satisfied he was. Suddenly, he said, "Oh, right. I forgot to give you a greeting gift." He took out a storage bag and put it on the table. "There are 1,000 high-grade spirit stones in here. It should be enough for you to cultivate to Qi training level 10. Then, he took out 2 things and put them on the table. "These are 10 foundation establishment pills. When you reach Qi training level 10, you can use them to build your foundation. If it's not enough, I'll give you more. The group of people was dumbfounded. 1,000 high-grade spirit stones and 10 foundation establishment pills. Could this guy be the god of fortune? Bai Zitsong, who was sitting next to him, picked up a foundation establishment pill with a purple aura. His face kept twitching. Is this the legendary Dan Halo? What does a kid's food have to do with you? Yu Qianqiu rolled his eyes. He snatched the foundation establishment pill from his hand and put it back on the table. Donghua Su let out a breath of cold air. He said to Hong Qi, "Hurry up and thank your master." The couple spent a lot of effort to get a foundation establishment pill back then. They knew very well how important it was to cultivators. The reason why he allowed his grandson to join supporting Immortal Island was because the number one sect in the world would give him 3 chances to reach the foundation establishment realm. Once he succeeded in his cultivation, he would not be easily bullied. However, Yu Qianqiu gave him 10 chances at once. Basically, it would not be a problem for him to cross the foundation establishment realm. What else could he say? Lil Hongqi knelt down and kowtowed 3 times. He said in a childish voice, "Thank you, master." Yu Qianqiu was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. He pulled Yang Kai over and patted Yang Kai's head. Glancing at the storage bag on the table, he said, "I gave you spirit stones for cultivation, but I forgot to give you some pocket money." Saying this, he threw out another storage bag and said, "Here are 1,000 high-grade spirit stones for pocket money." The group of people was completely speechless. This little guy calling him master was too expensive. 1,000 high-grade spirit stones for a master. Wasn't he just trying to scare people? That was incredible. This little guy really had a rich master. After his excitement subsided, Yu Qianqiu remembered that they still had some matters to attend to, so he stood up and said, "Mr. Donghua, your grandson will remain here for the time being. You'll be guiding him in his cultivation, and when he reaches the foundation establishment stage, I'll naturally personally guide him. As for the matter of him becoming my disciple, keep it a secret for now. I don't want anyone else to know. I hope you remember that." Understood. The husband and wife bowed. Yu Qianqiu nodded. He patted Lil Hongqi's head and said solemnly, "Work hard on your cultivation. Build your foundation as soon as possible. When that time comes, you'll be free to explore the cultivation world." Lil Hongqi seemed to understand. "Let's go," Yu Qianqiu said to the 4 of them. "Wait." Bai Zitsong smiled. "Since Brother Yu is taking in a disciple, how can we not give him a gift? I'll represent the 4 of us to express our gratitude." He took out a token and turned to Lil Hongqi. "I'm not as rich as your master. This token is for you. If you have any trouble in the future, you can take this token to the Bai family's shop in the 100 Flowers Valley. It should be of some help." Hongqi took the token. He didn't know the meaning behind it. However, his grandparents naturally knew. Of course, the things given by Yu Qianqiu and Bai Zitsong would also be kept by his grandparents. In the end, the 5 of them left without eating anything. They even lost a bunch of valuable items. However, they also gained a disciple. The 4 of them congratulated him along the way. Yu Qianqiu accepted it gladly. He was really happy. When they arrived at the entrance of the Cultivation Alliance, although the 2 disciples guarding the entrance knew Yu Qianqiu, they still stopped by Zitsong and the other 3 due to the rules. Yu Qianqiu couldn't do anything about it. He could only accompany the 4 of them and follow the rules. The 4 of them were here to make Yu Qianqiu proud. There was nothing to hide. They directly reported their identities to the disciples guarding the entrance. A disciple immediately asked everyone to wait. He turned around and went to report. After a while, he got permission to let them in. The 4 of them looked around and didn't find anything strange. When they arrived at the main hall of Fuxian Island, Yu Qianqiu shouted at the door, "Disciple Yu Qianqiu is here to see Elder Quan." "Come in." Quan Deming shouted from inside. After the 5 of them entered, Yu Qianqiu immediately told him who they were. The four of them greeted him one after another. Quan Deming was very polite to the heirs of the four great clans in the cultivation world. Although they were not as strong as the supporting Immortal Island, when they joined forces, they were not something ordinary sects could compare to. After knowing that the four of them were here to invite Yu Qianqiu to the four major families as a guest, Quan Deming considered for a moment and agreed. If it was Yu Qianqiu who wanted to go, he wouldn't agree. So many people from Fuxian Island had informed him. If something happened to Yu Qianqiu, how was he going to explain to those people? The invitation from the four major families was different. Firstly, it wasn't good to humiliate them. Secondly, with them around, Yu Qianqiu shouldn't have any mishaps. After coming out, the five of them agreed to set off early the next morning. They were going to the place that Yu Qianqiu was interested in, the Wu clan's auction. Chapter 178. It took less than half a day to travel from the Hundred Flowers Valley to Anquangsung on a flying Dharma artifact. Logically speaking, Wu Baoru and the rest should have returned yesterday. However, there was still no news of them. Lu Changqing sat cross-legged on the cattail hassock in the middle of the green light hall and felt that something was wrong. Could it be as he had guessed? Would supporting Xian Island make a move on Lu Jingguang and the rest? Originally, he was worried that his guesses were unnecessary. The dignified supporting Xian Island would disdain to do such a thing. However, for the safety of his grandson, he still took precautions. Now, he recalled the news from the Hundred Flowers Valley. Unexpectedly, Yu Qianqiu, whom everyone thought was dead, was still alive and had actually joined supporting Xian Island. Moreover, from the analysis of the few news that came, this kid seemed to be doing very well. He had a lot of faith in both the orthodox and demonic sections. Although he had beaten up Lu Jingguang, Lu Zhangqing thought about it again and decided to temporarily swallow his anger. Back then, he had almost forced Lu Jingguang to his death, so it was reasonable for Lu Jingguang to have this grievance. The situation was stronger than the person. It was not the time to get back the face that he had lost. Junior brother, have the people we sent returned? Lu Changqing asked an elder sitting below. Seeing that his grandson had not returned, he sent two elders to check what was going on. He could only hope that what he was worried about would not happen. The elder pondered and said, the two junior brothers went in the direction of the Hundred Flowers Valley. They should be back soon. As soon as he finished speaking, a ninth-generation disciple ran in a panic. After bowing, he looked embarrassed and couldn't say a word. Lu Changqing frowned and reprimanded, "Why are you so flustered? If you have something to say, just say it. Is there news from the two elders?" The ninth-generation disciple said embarrassedly, "The two elders are back. They respectfully invite the sect leader to go to the mountain gate." Lu Changqing couldn't be bothered to argue with this disciple. Right now, he was most concerned about his grandson. He got up and walked out of the hall. The elders on both sides also got up and followed. A group of people quickly passed through the square and arrived outside the mountain gate of Anquangsung. At this time, there were already many people gathered here, but their expressions were not very good. Seeing the sect leader and the elders come, they all gave way to them and bowed. Lu Changqing anxiously said, "Is there any news from the two brothers?" "Junior brother," the elder said anxiously. "Elder," Lu Changqing said. What appeared in front of Lu Zhangqing and the others was a large pile of bloody severed limbs on the ground. Not a single complete corpse could be found. There were also two storage bags thrown to the side, which were obviously the things that had been brought back from the dismembered corpses. On a stone platform a little further away from these things, there was a single head. One could vaguely make out Lu Jingguang's face. The bloody scene in front of them couldn't cover up the beautiful scenery around Qingguang Mountain. But at this time, who could appreciate it? No one dared to make a sound. Lu Changqing's breathing was getting heavier. His eyes were wide open as he stared at Lu Jingguang's head. His whole body was trembling fiercely. After a long time, he closed his eyes and exhaled. Controlling his emotions, he asked in a hoarse voice, Where did the two junior brothers find them? Reporting to the sect leader. One of the elders cupped his hands and said, the place where they were found was less than an hour away from the 100 Flowers Valley. Judging from the solidified blood, I'm afraid that not long after they left the 100 Flowers Valley, they were attacked. There were traces of fighting there. That is to say, the person who killed them also came from the 100 Flowers Valley? Lu Changqing asked with an ashen face. The elder nodded and said, from the surrounding traces, it is quite possible that Elder Wu and the others were pursued from the direction of the 100 Flowers Valley. There is another matter that is rather strange. Xinguang. He paused, pointed at Lu Xinguang's head and said, Xinguang's head was scattered several tens of meters away. It seems that it was kicked out by someone. What? Lu Changqing's figure swayed. Who had such a big grudge against my grandson? Who killed him and then kicked his head again? After stabilizing himself, the bones in his whole body cracked. He gnashed his teeth and squeezed out a few words. It's Yu Qianqiu. Yu Qianqiu probably wouldn't even dream that when he saw Lu Xinguang's head at the scene of the murder, he was very displeased and immediately kicked it far away. Who knew that just based on this point, Lu Changqing intuitively judged that it was Yu Qianqiu who did it? Who knew how he judged it? The others also had doubts about the sect leader's judgment, but they couldn't say anything. An elder beside Lu Changqing consoled, Sect leader, please restrain your grief. There will definitely be a day when the truth will come to light. The ashen-faced Lu Changqing slowly closed his eyes and said in a deep voice, bury them together in the back mountain. After saying that, he resolutely turned around and left. He really wanted to find his grandson's body, but it was already like this. Was it still necessary? The most important thing at the moment was revenge. It was night, the sky was filled with bright stars. There were countless stars on Qingguang Mountain. A figure streaked into the night sky. In the back garden of the Yu Mansion in Swallow Zicheng, Xue Ernyang was preparing to go to the wing room to rest. Two servant girls carried lanterns and led the way. Suddenly, someone said, Xue Dania's descendant, come here. Xue Ernyang and the two servant girls were startled. There was a lantern hanging in the pavilion of the back garden, and below it stood an old man with a horsetail whisk in his hand. He looked like an immortal, but it was a little strange for him to appear here in the middle of the night. The person who came was the sect leader of Anquang, Lu Changqing. Celestial Master. Xue Ernyang recognized him at a glance. She quickly walked over, and with a face full of joy, she bowed and said, Celestial Master, why did you come here so late at night? Oh. Celestial Master, please wait for a moment, I will call my husband and son to greet Celestial Master now. Hearing that it was Celestial Master, the two servant girls stood at the side, trembling with fear. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Wait. Lu Changqing said in a deep voice, you mean your son is also here? Xue Ernyang was stunned, what? Celestial Master doesn't know? Didn't my Qianqiu tell you? AI. This child is really. There's no need to trouble yourself. Bring me to him now. Lu Changqing waved his hand and interrupted her. Knowing that Yu Qianqiu was here, he didn't want to be long-winded anymore. In order to calm Xue Ernyang down, he actually squeezed out a smile on his face. Yes, yes, yes. Xue Ernyang didn't dare to say anything else and quickly led the way. The study room of the Yu residence was brightly lit. Yu Changgui was sitting at the study table, looking at his youngest son practicing calligraphy. He frowned when a series of hurried footsteps came from outside. They had been husband and wife for many years. No matter how fast the footsteps were, Yu Changgui could tell that one of them belonged to his wife. Why was she so impatient in the middle of the night? The half-closed door of the study room was pushed open. Xue Ernyang rushed in and said with a face full of surprise, Changgui, the celestial master from Qianqiu is here. Yu Changgui was shocked, which celestial master from Qianqiu? Xue Ernyang stomped her foot and said, which celestial master did you say? Of course it's the celestial master who took Qianqiu away. He's already outside. You two, father and son, hurry up and greet him. What? Yu Zhanggui's entire body trembled. He immediately took out a small porcelain bottle from his bosom in a flurry and quickly opened the lid. He wasn't like Shuaernyang, who didn't know anything. Before his eldest son left, he talked to him that night and specifically mentioned Lu Changqing. There was a great hatred between the two. The 3 porcelain bottles that his eldest son left behind were probably to guard against this person because only he knew where the Yu residence was. Don't delay any more. You two, father and son, hurry up and greet him. Shuaernyang urged. Yu Wuchou didn't understand what his parents were talking about. He held a pen in his hand and looked around. Yu Changgui calmed his mind and changed his smile to his youngest son. Hurry up and follow me to greet the celestial master. No need. Lu Changqing barged in by himself. His face was gloomy and his eyes flickered. In the end, he didn't see Yu Qianqiu. He couldn't help but shout at Shuaernyang in a deep voice, "Didn't you say that your son is here? Where is your son?" Shuaernyang pulled up his youngest son who was kneeling and said, "This is my youngest son, Yu Wuchou." "The son you're talking about is him?" Lu Changqing felt like he was fooled. Shuaernyang was still there and replied heartlessly, "Yes." Yu Changgui, who was a shrewd businessman, felt that the atmosphere was a little strange. He frowned and didn't say anything. In fact, Lu Changqing and Shuaernyang had a big misunderstanding in the backyard just now. The former thought that the son the latter was talking about was Yu Qianqiu, because he didn't know that Yu Qianqiu had a youngest son. The latter was used to thinking about problems with her brain. Of course, it had something to do with her not knowing about Yu Qianqiu's situation. She mistakenly thought that the former was talking about her youngest son. That was why this scene happened. Humph. Yu Qianqiu killed my grandson. Now that I can't find him, I have to bury your family of 3 with my grandson. Lu Changqing's ferocious face was exposed. Yu Changgui immediately pulled his wife and son behind him and stood in front of him. He said sternly, "Old man. You're the leader of a sect in the cultivation world. If you want to take revenge, just look for my son. Why do you have to involve us ordinary people?" The mother and son behind him were a little confused. They didn't know what was going on. Lu Changqing's usual demeanor was gone. He laughed evilly and said, "I kill if I want to. Do I need to explain to you?" He shook the horsetail whisk in his hand. Chapter 179. Under the night sky, Ethereal Palace stood at the peak of the mountain, echoing the brilliant stars in the sky. It was isolated, quiet, and charming. Yu Qianqiu, who had tasted the sweetness, pestered Chu Ping Air, and the two of them had another round of fun. After that, Yu Qianqiu pulled her up to the roof of Ethereal Palace, and the two of them romantically counted the stars. Wasn't he going to leave tomorrow? Perhaps he might not return for a few days. His new lover was about to be separated for a short period of time, so he couldn't forget to enjoy himself. Chu Ping Air stayed in Utopia for a day and understood that Yu Qianqiu was the owner of this place. In that case, she could barely be considered the female owner here. There was a hint of surprise in her shyness. However, when she saw Bai Suzhen, Chu Ping Air couldn't believe that there was such a beautiful woman in the world. Bai Suzhen didn't have any decorations on her. She was dressed in simple white clothes, and a silk ribbon was gently tied up her hair. She walked up to Chu Ping Air elegantly and said with a gentle smile, "You're Chu Ping Air? We met in Kwang-sung." Bai Suzhen's appearance, demeanor, and temperament made Chu Ping Air feel ashamed of her inferiority. For a moment, she didn't know how to reply. Recalling the other party's words, she suddenly recalled the white fox she had seen in Kwang-sung back then. It was her. Compared to before, Bai Suzhen's face no longer had the hidden bitterness that had always been there all year round. Now, there was a faint, calm, and satisfied smile on her face. Compared to before, her elegance was even more exuberant and dazzling. At first glance, it was almost impossible to recognize her. But why was she here? Subconsciously, Chu Pinger had already regarded herself as the mistress of this place. After a day, she understood one thing. Who was the real mistress of this place? Bai Suzhen. Even the male owner of this place was obedient when he saw her, bowing and calling her sister. Everyone in Utopia seemed to only recognize her as their mistress. If she said one thing, no one would dare to say another. Although this woman was very good to him, he couldn't help but feel a little jealous. Qianqiu, when will you bring my master here? Are you sure about this trip? On the roof of the ethereal palace, Chu Ping was nestled in Yu Qianqiu's embrace on a large deck chair. Chu Ping frowned and said, Ping, you have to trust me. You have to give me time. You have to know that this isn't something that can be done just because you say so. He had already forgotten how many times Chu Ping had asked him this question. Sensing the slight displeasure in his tone, Chu Ping climbed onto his chest, looked at him and asked, Did I make you unhappy? Don't let your imagination run wild. There's nothing like that. I'm just thinking about how to save your master. Yu Qianqiu hugged the voluptuous and bouncy body that had climbed onto him, caressing it all over as his gaze lingered on the boundless starry sky. Not good. Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry. He pushed away Chu Ping and stood up. His divine sense fluctuated, and after a brief check, he discovered that the porcelain bottle he had left for his family had been opened. How could he not be shocked? He had instructed his father to only open it if he encountered any trouble that he couldn't resolve. Using the remaining drop of blood in the porcelain bottle, he spread out his divine sense to check. Other than his parents and younger brother, there was another person in the Yu residence's study. It was Kuangsung's sect master, Lu Changqing. Yu Qianqiu roared, Lu Changqing, are you courting death? Then, he circulated his true essence and shouted to the foot of the mountain, Yunchang, gather all the troops for me. His voice spread out, breaking the silence of the night. He seemed unusually agitated and restless. Lu Changqing, who was in the Yu residence's study, had no idea that he had already crossed Yu Qianqiu's bottom line. Qianqiu, what's wrong? Chu Ping climbed up, pulled him and asked. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and shouted, Scram! Chu Ping fell back onto the deck chair, and he had already disappeared from the roof, directly appearing in Bai Suzhen's room. Bai Suzhen was looking out the window in shock. She had also heard Yu Qianqiu's agitated and restless voice. She didn't know what had happened, but before she could react, Yu Qianqiu had already grabbed her lily-white hand and said anxiously, Sister, my family is in danger. Without saying anything else, he had already disappeared from the room with her. Although Guan Yu's troops were already gathering urgently, he was still afraid that they wouldn't make it in time. If he went alone, he definitely wouldn't be able to defeat Lu Changqing with his current cultivation. Thus, he could only drag Bai Suzhen, who was in the final stages of tribulation, along with him. Inside the Yu residence's study, Lu Changqing had just finished speaking, and a cold voice appeared out of nowhere, saying, How arrogant. What right do you have to kill as you please? You'll have to get through me first. Yu Qianqiu and Bai Suzhen suddenly appeared in the study. Yu Qianqiu stared at Lu Changqing and sneered. Today, he wouldn't let him go even if he died. Who told him to touch something that he shouldn't have touched? Lu Changqing was stunned on the spot. Where did they come from? When little Yu Wuchou saw his big brother, his face was full of surprise, and the fear just now was gone. He immediately ran to Lu Changqing and complained, Big brother, he said that he wanted to kill his parents and me to be buried with his grandson. He's ting, just ignore him. Yu Qianqiu pushed his brother behind him. He was now also relieved, and he introduced them to Bai Suzhen. This is my parents and brother. Little Yu Wuchou poked his head out and stared at Bai Suzhen, nodding and saying, Sister is so beautiful. Bai Suzhen smiled at him, and then bowed to Yu Changgui and Shuarenyang. When the couple saw that their son had come, they were already relieved. At this time, they saw such a beautiful girl, and it was brought by their son. They immediately looked at each other, and immediately forgot the worries they had just now. Their eyes swept back and forth between their son and the beautiful girl, and there was a meaningful look in their eyes. Lu Changqing was very excited by the happy family in front of him. He pointed his finger and shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, it was you who killed Jingguang." Yu Qianqiu and Bai Suzhen both took a step forward and blocked the three people behind them. Yu Qianqiu laughed and said, "You dog, I really want to kill that damn eunuch with my own hands, but it's a pity that I can't do that." "What? Do you want revenge?" "To tell you the truth, the person who killed your grandson is outside. I'm afraid that you don't have the ability to take revenge, and instead, you will lose your old life." "What? You didn't kill him? Then who else could it be?" Lu Changqing shouted in disbelief. He had completely ignored the devastatingly beautiful woman beside him. "Humph." Yu Qianqiu sneered and said, "You will know if you have the ability to go out and have a look." As soon as he finished speaking, the sound of footsteps came from all around, and from time to time, there were cries of alarm from the servants in the mansion. Lu Changqing shook the horsetail whisk in his hand backhandedly, and a white light quietly hit a big hole in the wall behind him. It could be seen that he had an extraordinary degree of control over his cultivation. He rushed out in a flash and looked around, only to see that there were people in black everywhere. On top of the walls and on the roofs, there were countless of them. As soon as he came out, he was immediately surrounded by the people in black. Looking at the cultivation of these people, the lowest was at the core formation stage, and there were even many at the late nascent soul stage. Lu Zhangqing, who had been blinded by hatred, suddenly sobered up. He was greatly shocked. He was only at the late nascent soul stage. How could he be so reckless? As the leader of a sect, he actually came out to seek revenge? It was already impossible to retreat into the house, and the hole in the wall was already guarded by 5 men in black of the late nascent soul stage. In the face of the threat of death, Lu Changqing was scared out of his wits, and suddenly felt that his chances of survival were slim. Chapter 180. "Yunchang, since this old man is here, don't let him go back." Yu Qianqiu's voice floated out from the study. "Shoo." A whistling sound came from somewhere, and it was Guan Yu's voice. Most of the black-clothed men flew backwards, and the group of people surrounding him became much thinner, but there were still close to 100 of them. It should be known that this time, Yu Qianqiu called out all 3 companies in a fit of anger. Lu Changqing looked around vigilantly, and saw that most of the people surrounding him were at the late nascent soul stage, and the weaker ones were at the middle nascent soul stage. A fierce expression appeared on his face, and with a flick of his sleeve, a short flying sword flashed with a green light. In the blink of an eye, it expanded into a normal-sized flying sword. The body of the sword was blue, and it flashed a bewitching light in the night as it circled around his body. The horsetail whisk in his other hand was also flung away, and he slowly paced around in a defensive manner. "Kill." Guan Yu's voice came again. Nearly 100 cold lights left the hands of the men in black, and they quickly shot towards Lu Changqing. The latter quickly raised the horsetail whisk in his hand, and a strange phenomenon suddenly appeared. The horsetail whisk flashed with a white light, and the whisk instantly grew longer and spread out. Then, it spun rapidly like an umbrella, and a series of ding-ding-dang-dang sounds rang out. Nearly 100 flying swords were all bounced off by the flexible horsetail whisk. It was hard to believe that under the control of the people, the flying swords attacked back and forth a few times, but they couldn't advance at all. Immediately, someone exclaimed, "Bai Yi's horsetail whisk, sect leader on Kwangsung's top-grade defensive magic treasure. He is on Kwangsung's sect leader Lu Changqing." "What?" Then, someone else shouted, "Everyone be careful, that green flying sword is a top-grade offensive magic treasure, on Kwangsung's green destiny sword." This group of men in black came from various major sects, and naturally, there was no lack of people who knew their stuff. Although they had never seen Lu Changqing before, they immediately recognized him based on these 2 magic treasures. One must know that the weapons used in the cultivation world are generally divided into 3 types: magic tools, magic treasures, and spirit treasures. Generally, the flying swords used by cultivators were ordinary artifacts, but there were also some that could be refined into high-grade artifacts with better materials. However, weapons that had reached the magic treasure level were extraordinary. Magic treasures were not something that ordinary people could afford to use. Not only were the materials required to refine them expensive, but there were also too few people who had the ability to refine magic treasures. Occasionally, they would need to rely on luck to refine a good one. As for numinous treasures, he had only heard of them but had never seen them. Moreover, this person actually possessed a top-notch high-grade defensive magic treasure and a top-notch high-grade offensive magic treasure at the same time. Judging by the appearance of the magic treasure, who else could this person be other than the sect master of Anquansung, Lu Changqing? Nearly 100 flying swords attacked again, attacking like a storm, but no matter how hard they tried, they could not break through the seemingly thin whiskers. This horsetail whisker is also a magic treasure? Yu Qianqiu, who was watching the battle from the broken wall of the study, muttered. When Anquansung framed Wu Baoru wanted to kill him with a flying sword. He had seen Lu Changqing's horsetail whisker easily subdue the flying sword. At that time, he had thought that Lu Changqing's cultivation was profound, but he had never expected that this broken horsetail whisker was actually a magic treasure. Although he had stayed in the cultivation world for a long time, he had never paid much attention to magic treasures. The key was that he had never seen them before, so he had no concept of them. The first time he saw one, he was sure that it was the diamond bracelet used by the disciple of the cultivation pavilion during the competition on Fuxin Island. Now, he was already wearing it, but he had never used it. The reason why he hadn't used it was because he was afraid that one day, someone would use the same method to kill him. If that happened, he would die in vain. Now that he saw that the horsetail whisker could block the attacks of nearly 100 late-stage nascent soul cultivators, he immediately realized the benefits of a defensive magic treasure. He casually took out the bracelet and put it on his wrist. Then, he injected a bit of his true essence into it, and a faint yellow light enveloped him. The more true essence he injected, the darker the color of the light enveloped him. After putting away the diamond bracelet, Yu Qianqiu felt a bit depressed. Could it be that so many late-stage nascent soul cultivators couldn't deal with a late-stage nascent soul cultivator like Lu Changqing? Lu Changqing, who was relying on a magic treasure to defend himself, also came to a realization. That's right. What was he worried about? What was there to be afraid of? What was the point of having so many nascent soul cultivators? With Anquansung's 2 magic treasures in hand, what could they do to him? Lu Changqing's old face revealed a trace of an evil smile. He used the horsetail whisker to defend himself while sizing up the attacking black-clothed men. When his gaze fell on the flying sword that was attacking him, his face immediately sank. The flying swords that came to attack were of various shapes and sizes. Some were from the supporting Immortals Island, the Myriad Devils Temple, the Deluo sect, the Hopeful Moon sect, the Corpse God sect, and their old enemy, the Blood Devils Temple. It was actually people from the top 3 sects of the righteous and demonic sects who had joined forces to attack him. How was this possible? Lu Changqing shouted sternly, "Who are you people?" Based on his understanding of the righteous and demonic sects, it was absolutely impossible for such a thing to happen. Although everyone had been deprived of their original primordial spirits and trapped in utopia all these years, the changes brought about by the military-style spiritual training were difficult to underestimate. To put it simply, they had found spiritual sustenance. It was a spiritual belief that was different from when they only knew how to blindly cultivate in the past. Yu Qianqiu knew this very well. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been so many extremists in his previous life. The power of spiritual belief was terrifying. This was what Yu Qianqiu had constantly instilled in them. The attacks were getting more and more intense. Who would answer such a question? Otherwise, there would be no need to cover their faces when they came out to meet people. In fact, Lu Changqing was really afraid that they were from the 6 sections. If that was the case, what was the purpose of these 6 sects attacking the Anquansung sect leader? Just thinking about it made one shudder. Could it be that they wanted to destroy Anquansung? Seeing that they did not answer, Lu Changqing, who was shrouded in thousands of strands of dust, let out a sigh. The dust fluttered and instantly condensed into nearly 100 strands, spreading out like tentacles. Dozens of attacking flying swords were immediately entangled and taken away by the dust strands. The dozens of people controlling the flying swords were shocked. Once the flying swords were entangled by the dust strands, their connection with their divine senses was immediately severed. They could no longer control their attacks. In just a few moments, some people did not have time to withdraw their flying swords, and dozens of them were taken away by the dust strands. Yu Qianqiu let out a breath of cold air. Damn! This horsetail whisk was too awesome. It was obviously a defensive magic tool, but it actually had a bit of an offensive nature. It had taken away so many flying swords in one go. It was worthy of being the magic tool used by the Ang Kwangsung sect leader. Damn! This was troublesome. They could not kill this old guy. Lu Changqing glanced at the surrounding black-clothed people and let out another sigh. The dust strands shook and flashed with a white light. Suddenly, they grew several times longer, dragging dozens of flying swords and spinning at high speed. Someone immediately shouted, "Quickly get out of the way." Yu Qianqiu also realized the danger. While he was dodging, he did not forget to look at his parents. He saw that Bai Suzhen had already scattered a white silk and wrapped the family of three. She waved her palm and sent the family of three flying far away. Crash! Crash! A series of miserable cries rang out. Stone fragments and wood flew everywhere. In the blink of an eye, all the buildings within a radius of 10 meters were demolished by Lu Changqing. Some of the servants who were hiding in the rooms did not even have time to escape. They were the ones who screamed. The spinning whisk stopped. At this moment, Lu Changqing looked like he was covered in thorns from afar, making it impossible for anyone to attack him. He looked like he was invincible with a horsetail whisk in his hand. Yu Changgui and company, who were protected by Bai Suzhen, were all dumbfounded. They had never seen such a situation before. If they continued to fight, the entire Yu residence would probably be demolished. Guan Yu flew out from an alley and landed beside Yu Qianqiu. He asked, "Boss, what do we do now? We can't even get close to this old guy." "Let me do it." Bai Suzhen walked over. "No need for now. Big sister, I will make a move when I need you. I don't believe that so many of us can't deal with him alone." Yu Qianqiu turned around and shouted at the crowd, "I gave you so many talismans. Save them for later. Everyone, attack together. As long as you can attack, attack. I don't believe you can't defeat him. Attack." Chapter 181. Hua. All 300 men took out a pile of talismans. Instantly, the sky was filled with dark yellow talisman shadows that shot towards Lu Changqing from all directions. Lu Changqing's horsetail whisk started to spin again and danced in an impenetrable manner. The talismans that were bounced off were arrow talismans, while the talismans that were bounced off were fire talismans. None of the talismans could get close to Lu Changqing. Instead, the surrounding houses were all ignited by the fire talismans, turning the entire Yu residence into a sea of fire. The servants that were hiding immediately fled in all directions. Fortunately, no one stopped them as those that weren't burned to death had already disappeared. Damn! Stop! Stop smashing! Damn it, it's useless! Yu Qianqiu yelled as his house was about to be burnt to ashes. Everyone stopped, but Lu Changqing shouted, "Yu Qianqiu, hand over your life." He could tell that if this continued, he didn't know how long it would take. The most important thing now was to kill this leader and think about everything else later. In the middle of the whisk, there was a flash of green radiance. The green destiny sword flew up into the sky and dragged a green shadow behind it as it whizzed towards Yu Qianqiu. Bai Suzhen was shocked. Just as she was about to make a move, Yu Qianqiu shouted, "Go." He pointed his finger at the green destiny sword and a series of sword radiance shot out from his storage bag towards the green radiance. It was the 100 flying swords that he had cultivated. Ding-ling-ling. An ear-piercing sound of metal clashing could be heard. The flying swords that collided with the green destiny sword were instantly shattered into pieces. The flying swords that followed after had the same outcome. However, the destruction of dozens of flying swords wasn't completely useless. At least, it slowed down the Green Destiny Sword's attack. When the Green Destiny Sword's momentum was exhausted, the flying swords that Yu Qianqiu controlled immediately entangled it in the air. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief. Right at this moment, Lu Changqing shouted again as he pointed his finger at the Green Destiny Sword and stirred it. Amidst the group of swords that were fighting in mid-air, a green light flashed, and the Green Destiny Sword stirred. Ding-ling-ling. Another series of chaotic sounds rang out. Yu Qianqiu was instantly dumbfounded. His flying swords had all turned into scrap metal and fell to the ground. 100 flying swords were finished just like that. Damn it. Hi. Lu Changqing pointed to the sky, and the Green Destiny Sword flew to the top of his head with a swoosh. The handle of the sword was facing down, and the tip of the sword was facing the sky. He then flicked his fingers at the Green Destiny Sword. A clear sword cry rang out in the air. Then, the sword trembled and ripples of green light spread out in all directions. Damn it. What kind of trouble was this old bastard up to this time? Yu Qianqiu stared at the Green Destiny Sword in the air, and his face was twitching. So many people actually couldn't do anything to this old bastard. It seemed like he had to ask his sister for help. Wang. The Green Destiny Sword in the air suddenly produced a sword shadow that was over 10 meters long. As Lu Changqing continued to conjure his finger, the sword's shadow gradually solidified. The magnificent sword patterns on the body of the sword could already be seen clearly, and it looked like a giant sword that was over 10 meters long was standing in the air. Go! Lu Changqing shouted and pointed his finger at Yu Qianqiu. The giant sword that was over 10 meters long tilted its body, and the tip of the sword was pointed at the latter. With a whoosh, it sped up and attacked rapidly. Yeah! Guan Yu let out a shout and leaped into the air. A giant saber that imitated the green dragon crescent moon saber appeared in his hand. He swung it with both of his hands and slashed at the giant sword that was coming at him with an imposing manner. Bang! With a loud sound, the green dragon crescent moon saber in Guan Yu's hand shattered into a few pieces, and Guan Yu was sent flying as he spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. Yunchang! Yu Qianqiu cried out at the same time. Instructor! The group of black-clothed men did the same. A few of them who were close to him flew up and faced the descending Guan Yu. It was said to be late, but in fact, it happened very quickly. A series of scenes happened in the blink of an eye. The giant sword's momentum didn't stop, and the effect that Guan Yu had on it was almost negligible. Its target was still Yu Qianqiu. At the critical moment, Yu Qianqiu's body was enveloped by a dazzling golden light shield. At the same time, a white shadow teleported over and extended a black, sharp claw to grab the giant sword. Other than Bai Suzhen, who was in the final phase of the Tribulation Transcendence stage, who else could teleport? At this point, she couldn't wait for Yu Qianqiu to call out to her. In fact, Yu Qianqiu wasn't in a hurry to call out to her either. Creak, creak, creak. The sharp claw in Bai Suzhen's hand caught the sword, and it let out an ear-piercing screech. However, this Green Destiny Sword was really powerful. Even with Bai Suzhen's cultivation, she couldn't completely stop its attack. Bai Suzhen was shocked, and she immediately used her cultivation to the limit. However, the giant sword's edge had already pierced through the light shield on Yu Qianqiu's body. Bang! The sword's edge collided with the Vajra shield, and the ground shook. The giant sword stopped its attack. On the other hand, the light shield on Yu Qianqiu's body dispersed with a bang. The Vajra bracelet on his hand shattered into a few pieces and fell to the ground. Yu Qianqiu spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. His parents and brother cried out in grief. They didn't care about the danger anymore, and they quickly ran over. On the other side, Lu Changqing seemed to have used up a huge amount of energy to execute such a powerful attack. The Green Destiny Sword shrunk back to its original form with a whoosh. With a nimble flash, it tried to escape. How could Bai Suzhen let it escape? She teleported over and grabbed it with her claw. The strange thing was, no matter how hard it struggled, it couldn't hurt the mountain-piercing claw in Bai Suzhen's hand. From this, it could be seen that the Fox clan's treasure, mountain-piercing claw, was no ordinary treasure. Bai Suzhen immediately cut off the connection between Lu Changqing and the Green Destiny sword. She raised the sword in her hand and looked at Lu Changqing with a frosty expression. An Kuanseng's treasure really lives up to its name. With that said, she teleported to Yu Qianqiu's side and asked gently, "How is it?" Yu Qianqiu was half lying in his father's embrace. He looked at his crying mother and panicking brother, and he smiled at Bai Suzhen with a pale face. "It's not a big problem. I won't die. If I had known, would have gone to Utopia to hide." He paused for a moment, and a fierce look flashed in his eyes. He said in a cold tone, "That old B***starred injured Yunchang. Sister, we can't let him off. I want his life." Actually, he could have gone to Utopia to hide from the Green Destiny sword's sharpness. However, it was because he saw that Guan Yu was injured that he acted on impulse. Sigh. Impulsiveness is the devil. Bai Suzhen smiled gently and nodded in understanding. When she turned around to look at Lu Changqing, her face was cold again. Although the 300 or so men in black couldn't get close to Lu Changqing, they surrounded him to prevent him from escaping. This was the first time the triads had come out in full force just to deal with a single person. In the end, the people under them were fine, and the two leaders were severely injured. This was a great humiliation to them. Their eyes were burning with anger, and they wished they could swallow Lu Changqing alive. They didn't think that the sect leader of An Kuanseng, who was ranked 6th in the orthodox sects, wouldn't have the ability to defend himself. It would be a joke if he could be killed so easily. If that happened, An Kuanseng wouldn't be able to survive in the cultivation world anymore. Lu Changqing, who was hiding under the protection of the defensive magical treasure, Bai Horsetail Whisk, had already popped an energy recovery pill into his mouth to recover the primordial essence that he had expended. At this moment, he was filled with regret. He shouldn't have come to seek revenge on his own. How could he, who had always been smart, be blinded by hatred? Now that the sect treasure of An Kuanseng, the Green Destiny sword, had been snatched away by someone, even if he returned, how was he going to answer to the ancestors in the back mountain? Snatch it back? That was impossible. Based on the fact that the woman in white could teleport, it meant that she had the cultivation of a late-stage tribulation transcendence stage. It would be good if she could escape, let alone snatch the Green Destiny sword back. However, this woman looked very familiar, and he couldn't remember when he had seen a woman with such high cultivation. Bai Suzhen, who was dressed in a snow-white dress, had a pair of sharp black claws, which made her look very strange. Her pretty face was as cold as frost, and her killing intent had already been triggered. Step by step, she slowly walked toward the surrounded Lu Changqing. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.